All right, well, we're officially live here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, inside of Acrisure Stadium. Welcome into Scarlet Gray Sports Radio. Whether you're listening in on the YouTube stream, which we haven't had in a very long time, or on Mixler, wherever you're listening, welcome into Scarlet Gray Sports Radio. I'm Gabe Eaker. I'm joined alongside by Avi Schoenberg. And Avi, we had quite a day here today, but the Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock. Roger Goodell going up to the stage right now to select the first pick.
And certainly, Gabe, it will be Fernando Mendoza. We will hear in 2 seconds right here.
Shocker there.
Of course, it's Mendoza. We talked a little bit before the stream, Gabe, about how much help the Raiders needed especially like in their quarterback room and on offense. They drafted Ashton Jeanty last year, but for them, quarterback was definitely their biggest need. And who else but Fernando Mendoza?
Well, and I had the pleasure of calling a game that Fernando Mendoza played in when they took down Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. And one thing that stuck out to me is just his poise, right? I mean, you saw it throughout the entire season, really, but he just took his game to the next level under Curt Cignetti, had a lot of great offensive weapons and a really good running game behind him. Now, the question's going to be, the Raiders have a number one pick for a reason. Their protection has been spotty. There's questions about who the playmakers are going to be for Las Vegas. Maybe they try to trade up and get another weapon here in the first round. We don't know, but he's going to a place where it's going to be very tough for him to succeed with the weapons he has, but he has all the talent in the world to make that happen.
Yeah, of course. One of his big targets, that will be Brock Bowers, the big tight end, already considered one of the best tight ends in the NFL, and he's only been around for a couple of years. So for Mendoza, that is big. Obviously, they need some help in the wide receiver room, but Fernando Mendoza will certainly be an X factor for the Raiders. What do you think he specifically brings to the Raiders?
Well, I think he brings steadiness, which is something the Raiders haven't really had since Derek Carr. And Derek Carr, the last few years when he was playing for Vegas, I mean, he wasn't the player that Fernando Mendoza is. Now, when you're looking at the Raiders roster, though, one thing that sticks out to me is you have a guy like Kirk Cousins in there who's going to be able to be that veteran who's played a lot of games to give a lot of pointers out to a guy like Fernando Mendoza. But there's also a running back we took in the first round last year in Ashton Jeanty, who at points last year couldn't really get anything going because so many defenders were loaded up in the box. And now a guy like Fernando Mendoza who's able to air the ball out. You get a guy like Tyler Linderbaum in free agency coming over from the Baltimore Ravens. You offer him a huge contract. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he's going to operate in this offense. Now, like I said before already, Trey Tucker, Jalen Naylor, Jack Beck are the three guys that are supposed to be slotted in starting wide receivers right now. That's not going to win you a ton of football games.
Yeah, and I mean, for the Raiders, they tried making a big trade this offseason. Let's shift a little bit to the defense. They tried sending Max Crosby to the Ravens for a couple of first-round picks, but it was later decided that that never happened. So for the Raiders, how do you think their outlook for the season now, I guess, how do you think they look with Fernando Mendoza coming in and having some of those key pieces that you talked about, Jeanty and even Max Crosby back?
Well, I think it really hurt the Raiders with the Max Crosby trade not getting done, right? Because the Baltimore Ravens slotted in at pick number 14. That's a position where you could take a guy maybe like Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, potentially, if one of them is still there at that point, to really have a guy that Mendoza can lean on that's not named Brock Bowers, who's had some injury issues in the past. So I think in terms of an outlook for the Raiders next year, Patrick Mahomes is hurt for the Chiefs. You don't know how they're going to be. The Chargers are probably going to be a playoff team. And then you have a team like Denver, and you know, they have a really strong defense, so they should be better than next year, but looks like we're about to see the Jets pick pretty soon.
I was about to say, the Jets have been on the clock ever since they were ever since Mendoza was taken. They've been thinking about who they're going to take. Certainly, it'll be a linebacker, Gabe. Will that be Arvell Reese? Will that be David Bailey? We will find out just shortly, but if you're the Jets, who are you taking here?
Personally, for me, you're in a spot where there's a lot going wrong, right? I mean, you don't really have a franchise quarterback. You just shipped off a lot of pieces there at the trade deadline, whether that be a guy like Sauce Gardner or somebody else. So it's definitely going to be a rebuilding year or two for the New York Jets, and that's something that they kind of need with Aaron Glenn heading into his second year as the head coach for New York. But I would say for the Jets, have a guy like Arvell Reese would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, even David Bailey, we saw how good he was last year for Texas Tech, and you can't really go wrong. The top three linebackers in this class are pretty dominant. Sonny Styles also one of those names. Who knows? Based on his combine, he can even be a top 2 pick. Obviously, a lot of experts don't have him going at 2, but you never know.
You never know how much about his smoke also, right? I mean, there's just these crazy rumors always going around this time. So it's really tough to believe everything that you see in terms of these reports. But you got to have a franchise cornerstone with this pick.
Yeah, of course. Looks like the pick is in, so we will find out pretty shortly who will be the next New York Jet. But obviously, we're covering Ohio State. So speaking of some of those Ohio State guys, 4 of them are projected to go in the top 10. We will talk about that in a second. Roger Goodell is going up to the stand, and he will make the next announcement for the Jets.
With the second pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select David Bailey.
Wow.
It is David Bailey, Gabe.
David Bailey from Texas Tech, the edge rusher. And that was one of the big decisions, right, between David Bailey and Arvell Reese. Reese a little bit more raw, but I feel like he's more versatile. He kind of plays like Micah Parsons did at Ohio State. But on the other hand, I mean, David Bailey, a phenomenal pure pass rusher. He spent 3 years at Stanford before transferring over to the Big 12 champs at Texas Tech. Now, the question for the Jets is going to be, can they develop him to stop the run, and will he be an effective edge rusher at the next level? Because there's a lot of volatility with this pick.
I was about to talk about Arvell Reese and how he's more of that outside linebacker. Obviously, he told the NFL executives, yeah, I can play both. I could play outside linebacker. I could play on the edge. So for that pick, David Bailey, I mean, me personally, Gabe, I think that's a very good pick. Edge help is something the Jets have needed for a while, and something that I think Bailey could obviously help them with. He's going to be, I will say, he'll have a pretty big impact to start in this season. Obviously, coming in, the Jets didn't have the best season last year, especially on defense. Not a single interception for the Jets last season, so this defense surely needed some help on defense.
100%. And when you're looking at the edge rushers right now, I mean, Will McDonald and Joseph Asai, they've both had their moments, but they don't have that premier pass rusher that you need to win games and really make a push for the championship. And David Bailey, a guy who was able to do that at Texas Tech in his senior year, kind of a late bloomer of sorts, 19.5 tackles for loss in Lubbock last season, which led the conference. And he also led the nation in sacks with 14.5. But Avi, man, I mean, I'm not going to lie. When you have so many edge rushers on the board and you have such an incomplete roster to field, you got to think maybe you should have traded back into maybe the 8 or 9 range and let a team move up. Now, I don't know if there is going to be a team that wanted to pay that price for a non-quarterback. I think that might have been part of the issue why they didn't trade back. But I feel like there's a bunch of different ways that they could have gone with this. They get a guy who gets a lot of production throughout his college career and ended up being an All-American. So the production's there, but it's just about, can he take it to the next level?
I was about to say, going off of that, I mean, we saw last year how the second overall pick was traded. The Browns ended up trading that to the Jaguars, and for the Jags, they gave up a pretty hefty price just to trade up and get Travis Hunter. And of course, the Browns went back, selected Mason Graham. So yeah, that would be a huge haul for the Jets. Whoever they might have traded with, they would have gotten a lot in return. So taking David Bailey, I'm sure they were confident in him. In their pre-draft talks, whatever they said to him, he looks ready. He's currently talking to the media right now, and I feel like this is a really good pick for the Jets.
Well, in the Jets right now, obviously the top quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, goes off of the board. And you're at a point where, is there another quarterback that can help you turn your franchise around? I mean, it hasn't worked with Sam Darnold. He went on to win a championship with the Seattle Seahawks. So I guess it ended up working out well for him. But then you have guys like Zach Wilson. The Justin Fields experiment didn't work, and they tried to bring him in to try to turn this team around. And now it's up to Geno Smith, who had a really rough year with Las Vegas last year. I mean, look, the Raiders were the number 1 overall pick this season. The Jets just brought in the guy who, as some people called, the tank commander. So Geno Smith is going to have to do a lot with what the Jets have on offense, which at this moment isn't a whole lot. So, yeah, don't hate the pick about defense. But now it brings up a real wild card in this draft with the Arizona Cardinals at number 3, because, again, this is a team that could really go in any direction.
Of course, Gabe, and I'll make my early prediction now in terms of who I think is going to fly off the board at number 3. It might sound like a shock to you, but I do have Jeremiah Love. I think he is one of the top overall prospects in this draft. And I mean, for the Cardinals, running back has been a little bit of an issue in recent years. They just drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. not too long ago, so they have their wide receiver one, or at least they think they have their future wide receiver one. They, of course, have Trey McBride in the tight end room. They just moved on from Kyler Murray. However, for them, I think they do need to go offense here.
It's a tough spot to be in for the Cardinals because you're probably in the most competitive division in the NFL up to this point. You have the Seattle Seahawks, who just won the Super Bowl. San Francisco 49ers, despite always being injured, seem to make a push under Kyle Shanahan. They seem to be locked for playoffs every single year. You have the Los Angeles Rams and Matthew Stafford working into his late 30s, just a talented roster behind them as well, and another great coach in Sean McVay. It's tough to really compete for the Arizona Cardinals.
Who would you go with here if you're the Cardinals? Are you going offensive tackle?
I'm not. I'm going with the highest upside player, and that's either going to be Caleb Downs or it's going to be Arvell Reese.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before how Caleb Downs, he's obviously one of the best overall prospects, but we're probably going to see him slide down to probably around the 10 range. A lot of experts project him to go at number 10 to the Giants. But, I mean, that's a very fair point. Downs is incredible, and for a safety to go at number 3 says, it speaks for itself.
Well, I'm looking at the running back room right now. I mean, I don't hate the Jeremiah Love pick, although it is pretty high for a running back. And we talked about this last night a little bit when you're looking at the first running back off the board over the past 10 years. I think we ended up slotting him in around the 6th spot. But to put him at the number 3 pick, we haven't seen a running back get drafted that highly since Saquon Barkley. I don't know if Jeremiah Love is going to be the same type of player that Barkley was and the impact that he had for the Giants and also for the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, of course. But, I mean, for the Cardinals last season, it was very up and down. It obviously was Kyler Murray's last season as a Cardinal. While we didn't know it at the time, a lot was unfolding in the process. Marvin Harrison Jr. was expected to have a breakout year, but he struggled a little bit. So for this outlet, whoever you go here, whether that's Downs or let's just say Love, how do you think the Cardinals are going to look next year?
Cardinals next year probably going to finish last in the NFC West, but the guy that Roger Goodell is about to walk out and name might be a good building block for this franchise. Let's see what he says.
Because Aaron Glenn needs David Bailey to be good as a rookie and put up sack numbers to try and keep his job. This
Jeremiah Love. Wow. You know, we started hearing more buzz about him as the weeks started getting closer and closer to the NFL draft, but it's still kind of a surprise to me, Avi.
I mean, you just mentioned it. The last time a running back went this high was Saquon Barkley when he went number 2. So for the Cardinals, I think this is a great pick for them. Obviously, they have James Conner, but Love is just a game changer. We've seen how good he's been. He played Ohio State in the national championship just a couple of years ago, and I think he's the X factor that will certainly be very helpful for the Cardinals.
Well, I feel like also if Jeremiah Love, there's not a lot of bust potential there. I mean, he's a guy who can play all 3 downs. He can pass block for you. He's able to make catches out of the backfield, has a good frame, had about 1,200 yards last year, and that's splitting work with a guy like Jadarian Price, who probably is going to be the first running back off the board after Jeremiah Love. So there's a lot to like with him. I think he's very versatile in what you can do with him, but at the same time, you're still a rebuilding team. Is drafting a running back with a top 3 pick when you have premier edge rushers on the board the right move? I would probably say no, but the offense does look better with Love slotted in there instead of a guy like James Conner.
I mean, just think of their big 3 weapons now. They have Marv, they have Trey McBride, and they have Jeremiah Love. So they can go on the ground or they can go through the air. Obviously, we saw how dominant Trey McBride has been, but
don't sleep on Michael Wilson. He had a quiet 1,000-yard season too, and it seemed like Jacoby Brissett really liked him because he outgained Marvin Harrison Jr. I have a question, though. Yep. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm really excited about talking about this. Plus, it's SGSR, Scarlet Gray Sports Radio. Marvin Harrison, former Buckeye. What do you think the outlook is for Harrison now? Because there are people that are kind of out on him as a pro already after 2 seasons.
I mean, think about the season that Malik Neighbors had. He was the 2nd wide receiver drafted after Harrison, and for Marv, he was put in a little bit of a tough situation. Obviously, Kyler had a little bit of an injury that kind of bummed him, but for Jacoby Brissett to come in and, I mean, granted, he had over a 3,000-yard season, so he was pretty good. But for Marv, I don't personally see any bust potential. I think he can exceed the 1,200-yard mark this year. He's shown some flashes, I will say. One-on-one, he's been very good for the Cardinals. So I think he's actually on pace to have a breakout season.
Yeah, I mean, Marvin Harrison, he's got to figure out the drops, man, because the talent is just there. He was one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in like a decade. But Jeremiah Smith, excuse me. I'm getting too excited with Ohio State wide receivers. Jeremiah Love going to the Cardinals at 3, and then you look at the other 2 guys that got drafted before him. You had David Bailey at 2 going to the Jets, the edge rusher from Texas Tech, and then number 1 overall, Fernando Mendoza, big shocker there from Indiana, going to Las Vegas. But that brings up the number 4 pick in this draft, the Tennessee Titans, who had the number 1 pick last year, Avi. There are a lot of ways that they can go with this. Robert Saleh, the new head coach there for the Titans. Where do they go? Do they go offensive line, try and protect their quarterback? Or do they go for more defensive approach with a defensive-minded head coach coming in?
I really do think offensive tackle is the play here. I mean, for the Titans last year, we saw how Cam Ward was. He didn't have a bad season necessarily. It was his first year in the league. He's a rookie. He threw for over 3,000 yards, but still, it was his first season. You're not going to expect a killer season like Jaden Daniels had a couple of years ago in his first year. So he needs some help and he needs some protection. I feel like they have to go with maybe a guy like Maui Noah or whoever that first offensive lineman off the board should be. What do you think, Gabe? Who should be the pick here?
It's tough, and I've been pretty vocal about this. Maybe not on the air, but definitely off the air with the Tennessee Titans. They've invested a lot into this offensive line unit over the past few seasons, and I really like what they've been building. Now, have the results been good in that time? No, but I think they're still young. Peter Skoronski, a first-round pick a few years ago from Northwestern. He was a tackle in college, had to move into play guard. They had J.C. Latham 2 years ago coming out from Alabama, who's the right tackle right now. And they threw a bag at Dan Moore Jr., who is a tackle for the Steelers, that is now with Tennessee. So they have some nice pieces there. I don't hate the idea. You saw this with the Dallas Cowboys in the early 2010s really build up that offensive line. Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, and they had a phenomenal offensive line unit that a guy like Ezekiel Elliott could run through, and they also had good quarterback play. So I don't hate the idea of spending a premium pick on a tackle. And worst case scenario, if you have a guy who has shorter arms in this class, they're able to kick them inside at guard because there still is a hole at right guard.
Do you think that any offensive pick here is the good pick, or maybe some help on defense? I mean, the defense wasn't that bad last year, let's be honest. It was middle of the pack in the NFL. So for the Titans, do you go any offense here? Do you go defense? What's the pick?
Well, I think the pass defense was pretty good for Tennessee last season. They had a really good unit, but you need guys that can get after the quarterback. I think a guy like Arvell Reese could be a really intriguing pick here, but if not, Francis Malinois, I think, is the pick on the offensive side of the ball. Protect Cam Ward. You have Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard in the backfield. Just let Ward develop, have more time in the pocket, because he got crushed at times last season.
Yeah, and I mean, we just talked about Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese. They haven't been taken yet. Where do you think they are now going to fall to in the draft? Do you think even the Giants might be considering Arvell Reese now? I mean, he was linked to – I should say Sonny Styles was linked to him, but we will find out just shortly. We'll get back to that in a second as Roger Goodell makes the announcement.
Well, we will see how this plays out. But ultimately, they got to get it right. Wow, Cardell Tate.
Wow, and we just got our first big bombshell of the night. Cardell Tate being selected with the 4th overall pick, and a guy that both of us know very well, Avi. That's incredible because Tennessee needs a number 1 wide receiver. They need Cam Ward to have more weapons, but that offensive line is rough right now.
I mean, yeah, it was certainly unexpected, and you'd think out of all of the guys that Ohio State has, that Tate wouldn't have been the first Buckeye off the board. I mean, Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese, and Sonny Styles. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Caden McDonald before. He'll probably go towards the end of the first round. But Cardell Tate, what a pick for the Titans. I feel like they do need some wide receiver help. Obviously, you said they don't have a wide receiver 1, but for Cam Ward to now have his guy a year later says a lot. It says what the Titans want to do in the future and how they're focused on the offense. Maybe not necessarily protecting Cam Ward yet, But certainly we'll see. They might even trade up for a tackle, trade down for a tackle. The tackle class this year isn't, I will say, it's pretty good. It isn't the best, but the tackle class is pretty good. So there is an opportunity for them to pick up a tackle later.
And I think the best way to put it, Avi, is that I think there's 3 or 4 really good tackle prospects in this class, but I think the depth really teeters off once you get into that second round in terms of that position. Now, one thing that I've always been intrigued about is you bring in a guy who's either an offensive or defensive-minded head coach. Do you just run with that strength completely, or do you try to balance it out a little bit? Robert Saleh has had a couple of stints as a defensive coordinator over in San Francisco. He's a defensive-minded guy with the Jets, and this time around with the Tennessee Titans, decides to go with Carnell Tate. Now, here's what I think about Carnell Tate, and you can add on to this for sure, but I've been telling people this today that we've been running into, and I mean, really for him, he's the best route runner in this class. He has pretty good speed. He has good hands. I feel like he's a very well-rounded prospect, and there's a reason why he was the first receiver drafted here in the 2026 NFL draft. I don't see a whole lot of weaknesses in his game, and that's probably someone you need for Tennessee, who really hasn't had any elite receiver since A.J. Brown a few years ago.
Yeah, adding on to that, Gabe, there doesn't seem to be a single flaw in his game. I mean, for Tate, we talked about his route running, but I feel like one-on-one, he's also very good. One play that stands out to me that I still think about a lot is that Wisconsin game where he went up and not only did he lose his helmet, but he came down with the ball. He has all the physical tools. He has the route running ability, and certainly he has what it takes to elevate this Titans offense to the next level. While Cam Ward wasn't necessarily considered the best overall player in the class last year, he was the #1 quarterback. We have seen good flashes of him as well. So I think this duo is going to be very good going forward.
Arvell Reese still on the board here at pick number 5. The New York Football Giants are going to be up next. And John Harbaugh coming over after a very long tenure with the Baltimore Ravens. I would call it pretty successful. A lot of winning seasons there for Baltimore, but he's now with the Giants. Jackson Dart seems to be the franchise quarterback for them. But man, they have some issues on their team. And edge rusher, not really a big one. They drafted Abdul Carter last year from Penn State. They still have Kayvon Thibodeau, and they have a lot of nice pieces there, at least on the edge. Just traded away Dexter Lawrence, but they're able to pick up the 10th overall pick. How do you maneuver that if you're the Giants? Because you're going to be up in about 5 picks after this one, too.
I was going to say, at the same time, you do have that 10th overall pick, so you got to consider who am I going with now, who might not be available 5 picks later. If you're the Giants, I feel like you still got to take Sonny Styles here. We've seen how good Styles has been, especially the last couple of years at Ohio State. But on top of that, yes, Arvell Reese did primarily come in as a linebacker. He can play off the edge as well, but Styles is just a pure linebacker who can get things done. He's been linked to them, and I feel like that's the safe pick if you're the Giants. Caleb Downs obviously is a phenomenal prospect, but the question is, do you go with Downs at number 5 and then potentially save Styles or Reese for number 10, or are they not going to be available then?
I'm going to tee you up with something pretty interesting. I think outside of Fernando Mendoza, Caleb Downs is my number 2 prospect in this class. I think he's going to be a can't-miss guy. He'll be an all-pro kind of safety that really affects the passing and running defense at the next level in the NFL, but I don't know if that's where you go here. I think it is if you're the Giants, but I'm just going to be spamming Caleb Downs until he gets picked for where he should land. But I have a really interesting question for you, Avi. We didn't think that Carnell Tate was going to go at number 4. There are a lot of teams that need a number 1 wide receiver or a high-end wide receiver number 2. How much does that pick mess up the next few selections? Because maybe the Giants thought that he was going to be on the board. The Browns were really projected to him a lot because he would just have to drive up about 2 hours up to Cleveland from Columbus. How much did that shake up the rest of this draft, at least in the top 10?
I feel like it certainly did a lot. I mean, for even the Browns and the Commanders, I saw Tate was also linked to the Commanders. Certainly they do need help at wide receiver, but for them, I mean, this pick changes a lot. Everyone, at least everyone here in the media room, was expecting a guy like Maui Noah help on the offensive line, but instead they go with a skill position, someone that really needs, I guess you could say, someone that can really help Cam Ward, someone who they really need. So this definitely shakes it up. I mean, we're going to rave about Caleb Downs as much as we can. I would consider him other than Jeremiah Love, one of the only bust-proof players in this class. He's going to have a solid career, whether he lands on his desired team, whether he lands in a defense that he's comfortable in. He is a game-changing player. So this certainly messes it up. What do you think?
I think it shakes it up a little bit too. What do the Browns do at number 6? Well, I think it's going to be a lot more likely that they're going to end up taking a tackle that they need. But the Giants, on the other hand, I doubt they go tackle here. They've been linked to Sonny Styles a lot. Styles, a guy who plays with a lot of speed, former defensive back, and he really made a lot of plays for Ohio State last season. I would say that's probably where you go here. And Arvell Reese, I think the slide is on, man. I thought that he was a very raw prospect heading into this draft, but I think the upside is otherworldly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a shock here if we see Reese fly off over Styles. We talked about how Sonny is a pure linebacker compared to Reese, who has told everyone that he also can play off the edge. So the pick is in. We are just moments away from seeing who Coach John Harbaugh and the Giants are selecting with the 5th overall pick.
Offensive coordinator, new for the Giants too, Matt Nagy coming over, and that's going to be an interesting setup in terms of the Giants scheme. Isaiah Likely coming over from Baltimore, Patrick Ricard as well. There are going to be a lot of good weapons now, albeit they have to be healthy. Malik Neighbors, unfortunately, had that season-ending injury early on last season. Cam's got to be kind of the same way. But with a running back, Jeremiah Love being off the board, they obviously aren't going to go reaching here. So I think it's probably going to be something on the defensive side of the ball.
Roger Goodell comes to tell us what that pick is. We will find out in just a moment.
I love a suit game from him this year.
With the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, TAPS, one of the NFL's salute to service partners.
His hair's coming down a little bit too, Avi. I mean, it's humid and hot here in Pittsburgh, and the commissioner is not protected by that.
I will say for us too, I mean, we're walking around right now. We got some pants on and we got, I mean, I got a polo on, but you got a quarter zip on. It is pretty hot. It is pretty humid. We were walking around the fan experience in the fan area earlier. It is hot outside, even in here.
You wanted to wear a suit.
The AC's on in here, but still, it's starting to feel it a little, especially as the Giants come up to make this pick.
They have a couple of fans up there right now. A lot of tackles on the board right now, Avi.
With the 5th overall pick,
Here we go.
2026 NFL Draft, the New York Football Giants select Arvell Reese.
Whoa!
Wow, Arvell Reese going to the New York Giants at pick number 5, and they have maybe the deepest and the best edge rushing future in all of the NFL now.
That is a crazy pick. If you're me, if you're John Harbaugh, you have a linebacker, but you also have a guy who can play off the edge. Obviously, last year they took Abdul Carter, so they don't necessarily need help coming off the edge. But, I mean, this is the second time I've called it, Gabe. I called Jeremiah Love, but now I said, what if they switch it up and they go with Arvell Reese? You talked about Reese's upside and how good he is and how he can turn into a game changer. And it doesn't necessarily shock me that he was chosen at number 5. It just shocks me that he was taken before Sonny Styles, given how the Giants are running right now.
The Giants gave up a lot of draft capital not too long ago to get Brian Burns, too, from the Carolina Panthers, who's one of the best edge rushers in all of the NFL. So you have Brian Burns. He's elite. You have a guy with sky-high potential in Abdul Carter. You have Kayvon Thibodeau, who has been a little underwhelming given his draft position at some points, but he's still really good. And now you add in Arvell Reese, who has the potential to be an all-pro kind of guy, but he's also versatile enough to potentially be a guy that drops back into coverage. We know the Giants need linebacker help, at least in the second level. That's going to be a really interesting pick, and honestly, I kind of dig it for John Harbaugh coming over. They also have playmakers in the back, like Tyler Newman, who's a ball hawk, and if you can get to the quarterback, force him to make a bad decision, throw it to the secondary, it gets a lot of picks. That's a good recipe for success.
Yeah, and we see how the Giants have been leaning on their young talents, especially last year with, Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo were running the show for them. No Malik Neighbors last year, at least after the first couple of games, no Malik Neighbors, but still, I mean, it will be an interesting season for the Giants, of course. Having Reese now, that is certainly, for me, an unexpected pick, but I think it is the right selection at number 5.
Well, let's talk about the NFC East a little bit. The Philadelphia Eagles kind of had a down year. A.J. Brown wants out. A lot of people think he's going to go over to the New England Patriots. We'll see if that happens or not. So the Eagles are more vulnerable than in the past few years. The Dallas Cowboys, very kind of just stuck in the same position, it feels like. They haven't really moved up or down. They still have a pretty solid team. They have guys like Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens coming over on the offensive side of the ball. They're trying to bolster it up after trading away Micah Parsons. And then the Commanders, I mean, they need to protect Jaden Daniels, which they haven't really done very well. And they lost Cliff Kingsbury in the offseason, the offensive coordinator. We'll see if that was the right move or not. But regardless, it kind of feels like out of the teams in the top 5, the Giants are a team that can kind of crack out of a cellar and end up being a playoff team next season, especially if a head coach like John Harbaugh.
Now let's move on to the Cleveland Browns, who are now on the clock and going to make their pick at number 6. Who do you think the Browns go with here? Obviously, Carnell Tate was linked to them. He's now off the board. If you're the Browns, who are you going with? Do you go with an offensive lineman? Do you go with Maui Noah, who's projected to be the first tackle off the board? Or, I mean, what else is in store for the Browns?
Well, it's kind of interesting that you brought up Maui Noah because Arvell Reese was a guy that went up against him in the Cotton Bowl in Miami, won that game and an upset. Really good pass protector, and I think Maui Noah is the best tackle in this class. If you're Cleveland, though, I don't think it matters who the tackle is. You need to draft. There are a lot of holes on this offense. You need playmakers at the wide receiver position. You're not really going to get that now unless you want to try to reach a little bit on Jordan Tyson or Mekhi Lemon now that Carnell Tate went to Tennessee. So it'll be interesting to see where the Browns go with this pick. I would have to assume it's got to be tackle. Now, you got to protect the quarterback. Do we know who the quarterback is? Will it be Deshaun Watson on that monster contract who hasn't really lived up to the hype since those Houston Texans days? I don't know. Is it Shedeur Sanders? It's really up in the air right now. But Cleveland, I think, is a team that will probably be in the mix for one of the top quarterbacks next season. It's a strong quarterback class in 2027. I say you set the infrastructure and then just prepare for another rough year on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I agree. And, I mean, for the Browns, as much as they could need the help on defense for a guy like Sonny Styles, they have Carson Schlesinger, who had a very good season last year. He was drafted in the second round last year. Like, for the Browns, I mean, they have a linebacker who's very good.
Really good at stopping the run.
I was about to say very good at stopping the run. But at the same time, it'll be interesting to see if they go with Maui Noah. Roger Goodell has now made his way to the stand and will announce the pick.
Defense was good last year.
2026 NFL Draft, Kansas City Chiefs select Mansour Delane.
Wow.
Defensive back, LSU.
So we were talking about the Browns, but actually, as we were talking, Gabe, the Chiefs traded up to number 6 and took the cornerback, Mansour Delane. I mean, for the Chiefs, they just traded away Trent McDuffie to the Rams. So, I mean, we weren't even paying attention, Gabe. That's how much we were talking about both the Giants and the Browns. But this is a big pick for the Chiefs who, I mean, they didn't make the playoffs last year, which was a surprise to everyone. But Mansour Delane has now flown off the board.
And that's hilarious, Avi, because I think we were so infatuated with this tackle class. But Mansour Delane coming off the board is really good for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, they traded away Trent McDuffie to the Rams. They were kind of in a salary cap situation where I'm trying to find the right word for it without slurring on air, but salary cap where they didn't really have the chance to pay Trent McDuffie. So you pick up a guy who has really good cover skills, good ball instincts. And really, we don't know what Kansas City is going to be next season, but we'll definitely get the trade details for what they had to give up because Patrick Mahomes is probably going to miss some time next year.
Yeah, I mean, for Mahomes, he went down with that injury at the end of the season. Travis Kelce announced he will be back. For the Chiefs, they are still projected to be one of the top teams in the NFL next year. I mean, this was certainly the pick for the Chiefs. At number 6 is, I mean, do you think that's the right pick? Do you think trading up to number 6 is the right pick?
For Kansas City, I think you're in a spot where, look, you have some draft capital, especially after picking up Delane, and they really needed help at the cornerback spot. So you still have that contending roster. You have a generational quarterback who will come back at some point, but they had to give up quite a bit to get him. So they had to give up their number 9 overall pick, also their number 74 and 148. So that's going to be a 3rd and a 5th as well. I guess I'll spin it to you this way because you just asked me about the Chiefs. What do you think about that return for Cleveland? Again, we talked about them being a team that is probably not going to compete this year. There's a lot of good quarterbacks. You're probably going to need one next year at this time. What do you think about the return from the Browns here?
I feel like for the Browns, you could have done a little better on the return. Yes, you get a 3rd and a 5th to move down 3 spots to the number 9 pick. But considering the class, I feel like it could be a good option in terms of offensive lineman and offensive tackle. If they're going to choose a tackle at number 9, I don't hate the trade. I think it's a pretty good trade, getting a couple of picks. But for the Chiefs, I think it's a power move. It shows that they're back. Although Patrick Mahomes got injured at the end of the season, they are still a contender and want to be at the top of the NFL.
Yeah, and again, I think it just comes down to the health of Patrick Mahomes, because even when he played, kind of had a down year. Now, how many more years does Andy Reid have left as the head coach? We don't know. He's not going to get fired, obviously, but he's getting to that age where maybe he wants to take a step back. So trading up, you're not really losing a whole lot with that 3rd or the 6th. And when you are the Kansas City Chiefs and you need some more help on defense, kind of reload the clip, I think that's the right play. But I think it's kind of a win-win scenario because obviously it seemed like Cleveland probably wanted to go Carnell Tate at number 6. There's not a lot of tackles that have been off the board so far. So I think the Browns realize that they can trade back a little bit, still take a position of need. I think it's a win-win trade.
I definitely agree, Gabe. Now let's shift our focus because we got a little sidetracked talking about the Browns, and they traded. We didn't even know they made the trade. We were so locked in. So let's quickly move on. Let's talk about the Commanders. They've already made their pick. The pick is in. They know who they're going to take. Shortly, Roger Goodell will come up and tell us who the Commanders are taking. Who do you think the pick is for Washington?
Really anyone who can protect Jaden Daniels. He got crushed last year, and even when he was hurt or playing hurt, he would just come back in and get destroyed again. Francis Malienoa, man, he's right there. Tackles are hard to come by, especially the elite ones, so we'll see if that's who they take.
I will say I'm 2 for 2 on predictions for the day, but I'm going to make another crazy prediction. We talked about him. We raved about him. Caleb Downs. I feel like the Commanders might make a little bit of a shocking move and take Downs at number 7.
Dan Quinn, a defensive mind as well, and safeties right now for them, Nick Cross and Quan Martin. Caleb Downs would instantly be the best safety there in that defensive back unit.
We will see. So right now, we're expecting Malienoa, Downs. We'll see who the pick is. Obviously, Goodell is up there speaking right now. We will find out shortly. But first, for the Commanders, last year, a little bit of a down year, considered the year they had before making the NFC Championship. So we will see how Jaden Daniels and the Commanders bounce back with this next pick in the 2026 NFL Draft.
With the 7th pick, the
Here's the announcement.
2026 NFL Draft, Washington Commanders select Sonny Styles.
Sonny Styles, another Buckeye going off of the board here. And wow, Avi, he's going to make an impact right away with this Commanders unit who has Frankie Louverberry as a tackling machine, Leo Chanel as well, kind of the same archetype. But now they have a linebacker who can cover as well in the passing defense.
Yeah, for Styles, he really proved himself at Ohio State, but he proved himself even more at the Combine and showing what he can do physically. He is a monster on the field. He told the media beforehand that he wouldn't cry, and here he is. A little bit of tears shed from Styles, the kid from Pickerington, Ohio, now going 7th overall to the Commanders. Now the 3rd Buckeye off the board. We talked about Ohio State a little bit. They played in the Cotton Bowl, lost to Miami. They exceeded expectations, Miami did, and that's why Francis Malienoa, one of their players, will certainly be picked very soon. Styles, great prospect, great player, great pick for the Commanders.
I think so, and talking to him in person, you know that he's a big guy, but when you're standing right next to him, he just seems like a monster of sorts because he's jacked, he's really tall, and then when you see him in action on the field, man, he's speedy. Also, his brother is as well, who we might hear his name called later on in day 3 potentially, but Yeah, I think the Commanders definitely need some help on the defensive side. Sonny Styles, another guy who doesn't really have a lot of weaknesses in his game and is going to probably be a surefire pick and a starter for the Commanders, at least for the next 5 seasons.
I definitely agree. Now, moving on, Sonny Styles off the board now. It's time for the Saints to make their pick. Who do you think they are picking at number 8?
So the Saints are in an interesting spot because it seems like Tyler Shuck is at least going to have next season to prove himself. And if he falls flat on his face, like I've said a billion times already, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in next year's draft class, supposedly. They brought over Travis Etienne as a starting running back, and he really had a resurgence year with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But there's so many good tackles on the board. They just drafted Tyrese Fuaga and Kelvin Banks, so they're young. They have really nice cornerstones there on the offensive line. They're probably not taking a tackle. So, man, I mean, in a spot like this, you kind of have a luxury of taking best player available. And how crazy would it be to get a guy like Caleb Downs?
I mean, yeah, we should probably stop talking about Caleb Downs because we've talked about him a lot. But
It's the best player available,
I mean,
man.
as of now, yes, the best player available. I mean, for the Saints, they do have Shuck. They do have Achane in the running back. But they also have some help in the wide receiver room with Chris Olave. Had a bounce-back year this year, obviously dealt with some injuries, but he had a breakthrough season this past season. So I don't hate it. The defensive pick, I think Downs is a great option for the Saints, who not a lot of people are expecting to end up in New Orleans.
So far, when we go down the list, Fernando Mendoza with the number 1 overall pick going to the Raiders, David Bailey, edge rusher, going to the Jets, Jeremiah Love, the running back, going to the Cardinals, Carnell Tate to Tennessee, Arvell Reese to the Giants, Mansour Delane in that trade up for the Chiefs, jumping from 9 to 6 with the Browns. They get another defensive back in that group that has had a lot of success over the past few seasons. And now Sonny Styles going to the Commanders at number 7. What's the biggest shock to you so far? Because I feel like that Carnell Tate selection kind of shook it up a little bit.
I do feel like Tate was the biggest shock. I mean, if you're the Titans, you do need help at the wide receiver position. They chose Cam Ward last year. They needed someone who can play on the offense that could be that X factor other than Ward. They had Tony Pollard last year who didn't play as much as he wanted to, but at the same time, getting Cam Ward, a wide receiver, was a great selection, I believe, for the Titans. And like you said, it shook up a lot of things in this draft. We now have to think about where are some of the other wide receivers going to fall. Jordan Tyson of Arizona State. You have Mekhi Lemon of USC. Do you draft a wide receiver other than Carnell Tate that high? What do you think, Gabe?
Jordan Tyson's intriguing to me for a lot of reasons. I think his biggest issue has been staying healthy, and sometimes he has those drops that can be an issue that we've seen plague some of these blue chip prospects in the past, like Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, the Saints don't really have a lot outside of Chris Olave. Tyler Shuck, who they seem to believe in, they drafted him on day 2 last year. Had some highs, had some lows, but the Saints are going to believe in them. Kellen Moore, a head coach, offensive-minded guy. I could see them taking a wide receiver with this selection for sure. Now, Jordan Tyson, I think he has a very high floor, but also, a high ceiling and a low floor.
I definitely agree, Gabe, but you also have to consider, do you think the Saints can also go edge here? Ruben Bain has been projected as a top 10 pick. He's on the board. Some concern about his arm length, but we saw how dominant he was. That Miami front in general last year was phenomenal. Led them to the national championship and almost knocked off number 1 Indiana. What do you think?
Well, and I'm just thinking about back to the experience at the Cotton Bowl when I was on the call for that game. Ruben Bain, it didn't matter where he is lined up, whether it was on Austin Saraville, the left tackle, or the right tackle, Phillip Daniels. He was just like a NASCAR car, just driving straight through them, running around tackles left and right. Will that work in the NFL? I think he has the burst and the speed to do it. But there also is a little bit of concern with the news that came out earlier this week. And maybe that's something that NFL teams don't want to see. So the Saints, again, they're not really in a spot where they're going to be super scary next year. It's kind of a weak division, in the NFC South. So I think you just go with the guy that you think is going to give you the best chance in the next 2 or 3 years to really launch you into that spot of contention.
I was going to say the NFC South last year, I mean, look who made the playoffs. It's obviously not the best division.
It's ugly out there.
However, if you're the Saints, they just made their pick. The pick is in. We'll find out in a second. But I feel like any help is truly going to help them. I think they started 0-5 last year, 0-6, one of the two. Not the best start for the Saints. They have to turn it around, and it starts right here with the 8th overall pick.
Well, I'm looking at their secondary, too, and Justin Reed's a guy who's been a baller for the Chiefs. He's been a baller for the Saints. Julian Blackmon's not bad in the safety spot. Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama a few years ago is a pretty solid cornerback, and then Quincy Riley, who's been kind of underrated for the Saints. They have a pretty solid secondary unit. Again, we talk about Caleb Downs a lot. Mansour Delane's off the board, so definitely not going to take a corner here. But I think they're pretty set up in that secondary unit. Again, the offensive line is pretty young. They have a good blend of veteran offensive linemen and Eric McCoy. And as reliable as he's been, sometimes a liability, Cesar Ruiz inside. And we talked about the 2 young tackles. I really like where the Saints are at least on the offensive line side of the ball. So, yeah, probably going to be either an edge rusher here and Ruben Bain potentially, or they're going to go wide receiver.
And how good would Ruben Bain be in this defense? A compliment to Chase Young, who obviously hasn't lived up to those insane expectations he had, especially coming out of Ohio State. But I think this could truly be a great pick if Ruben Bain is selected here at number 8. A great compliment to Chase Young. We will find out in just a second as Roger Goodell makes his way to the stand after we hear the rest of Sweet Caroline here being played in Pittsburgh.
Got some live music going on. I have a fun story after this, too, about our day earlier, but let's hear the pick for who the Saints are going to take first.
In the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Jordan Tyson.
Jordan Tyson of Arizona State going to the New Orleans Saints, pairing up with Chris Olave and Tyler Shuck down there in Louisiana.
I think that's a great pick. We talked about Chris Olave a little, or at least I talked about Chris Olave a little, and he is a little injury prone, and I guess you can say Jordan Tyson is as well. However, when these two are on, they are on. They are very good.
Tyson's interesting to me because he's kind of a physical guy. Spent a season at Colorado, then over at Arizona State, and there was a lot of success with him now. Like you just mentioned, I think injuries are a concern. I think drops can be a concern now. With those two, at least when I'm evaluating players, I wouldn't slot them in the top 10 like the Saints just drafted him as. But again, you're kind of in a spot where you want to see where your quarterback, I want to say young quarterback, but I always forget that Tyler Shuck is 25, 26 now as a second-year starter in this league. You want to see what he's capable of, and if you give him the most weapons as possible, you can really see what the ceiling of a guy like Shuck is going to be as the signal caller. I think the Saints had the chance to just grab the guy that they really liked who has a high ceiling that might have a lower floor, just because, again, they might be good enough to win the South next year, as crazy as that sounds. But at the same time, if they don't and things just don't go well, you could be in the top 10 again, and it's a loaded class next season as well.
So now this brings up the Browns. The Browns we just talked about. I mean, we thought they were going to make the 6th overall pick, and they did not. We were too focused on talking about the Browns and some of their needs. Who do you think the Browns go with here? Do you think it was smart of them to move back a couple of picks and now take Maui Noah? Or, I mean, this might sound crazy, but we might see the 3rd wide receiver in Mekhi Lemon be drafted in the top 10.
Let's see. So we're live on Mixler right now. We're live on YouTube. Let me look into the camera while I'm saying this. Andrew Berry is a genius for what he was able to pull off. He gets a late-round pick. He gets a 3rd-round pick. And not a single offensive tackle has gone off the board yet. I think that's exactly where you want to be as Cleveland. Francis Mauigoa, probably your guy here. But if you like another guy more like Monroe Freeling or Spencer Fanu, go for it, man. I mean, you can pick whoever you want at this spot. Plus, you get more draft capital. You're a rebuilding team that needs help at quarterback. Why not pick up a tackle?
I really like the trade now. Now that I see who went right before Mansour, or right after Mansour Delana, I should say, I think this is good. If you get your guy in Maui Noah 3 picks later and now get a 3rd and a 5th, that's great. Do you think they could have gotten a little bit more from the Chiefs, maybe even a second rather than the 5th and 3rd?
I think because it's such a weak quarterback class, outside of Fernando Mendoza, maybe we see Ty Simpson get drafted later on in this first round. Who knows? I think the value of the picks deteriorates a little bit because teams aren't trying to trade a lot to give up for like an edge rusher or something like that. Not saying edge rushers aren't important because they're one of the most valuable positions in football, but quarterback is on an all different kind of level. So I think it was good enough for the Browns. I mean, you were probably going to take a tackle at the 6th spot anyways. I think it was fine. But what I want to talk to you about, because I know I prefaced this, our time earlier at the NFL draft, we were just walking around everywhere, man. I mean, it was so cool to see like all of the fans of all these different teams, a lot of the AFC North fans there, and we kind of wandered around everywhere, which I thought was pretty interesting, a different experience, at least from our end, because we're usually just calling games.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty good to walk around and get some more behind the scenes look and really be immersed into this experience. I mean, typically we cover Ohio State and college sports, but for us to be covering the NFL here, it's truly an amazing experience.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to have some special guests on a little bit later too, at least throughout this process, just because our vocal cords are probably going to die at some point. It's crazy we're already at the number 9 pick for the Cleveland Browns, but we have some special guests that we'll have on as this progresses. But now that we're looking at the Cleveland Browns, we think it's probably going to be an offensive tackle. And then the New York Giants, who traded their superstar defensive tackle, Dexter Lawrence. They're on deck right now. What do you do if you're the Giants in this spot? Because you just picked up a stud in Arvell Reese. Do you double dip in the Ohio State talent with Caleb Downs?
I think you do. And let's stop talking about Caleb Downs. All right. We know he's good.
I can't, man. I mean, the Giants are a team that could really use safety help. I think we know that what he's capable of, and you pair them back up together, Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, we saw how Caleb Downs was last year. We saw him commanding the defense. We saw how smart of a safety he is. So, with that being said, Roger Goodell is here to make the pick for the Cleveland Browns at number 9.
The 2026 NFL Draft. The Cleveland Browns select
Spencer Fano, Utah Ute, offensive tackle, first tackle off the board, and Cleveland liked him more than they liked Freeling and Maui Noah.
Yep. And Fano isn't here at the draft in Pittsburgh. He's back at home as we're seeing his live reaction now, being selected by the Cleveland Browns. But that now brings up the New York Giants. Caleb Downs, is he the pick?
I don't know if I know who that guy is, but man, Fano, I love the pick for Utah, from Utah. But with the Giants, again, you could maybe use some offensive line help. But there are defensive players that are really intriguing. Probably not going to take a guy like Ruben Bain, considering they're just loaded at edge rusher now, but you never know. Really interesting stuff so far throughout 9 picks, and I'm really excited to see who the Giants are going to take. The Bengals, a team that needed a lot of help on the offensive line, and they traded away their pick to bolster their defensive line. And I don't know if they're kicking themselves now, knowing that all of these strong tackles are on the board, but Avi, I'm going to step aside for a second. We have our vice president of podcasting for this upcoming year on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio, Joey Bardak, who is here at the NFL Draft as well, doing some work for the lead, but would love to hear his analysis. And I'm going to take a quick break as you hop on with Joey, and he's got great analysis, so make sure not to go anywhere.
Sounds good. So really quick, Gabe, stay with me right now as the Giants are actually selecting, but right after Roger Goodell makes this announcement, you are being traded. So you know.
Just like Dexter Lawrence. Ouch.
The New York Giants select Francis Maui Noah.
Seemed like he had a stroke a little bit as he was saying that last name. It's not an easy one.
And
Francis Maui Noah.
with that pick, Caleb Downs slides out of the top 10, so we will not see 4 Buckeyes go in the top 10. However, the Giants traded Dexter Lawrence away, and Gabe, we will see you very shortly as we're going to trade you for Joey Bardak. So, Joey? Thank you, Gabe.
For the headset, and you're all good.
Show me the best, please.
All right, Joey, welcome to the show. Welcome to our draft coverage.
Thanks for having me, Bobby.
What has been the most shocking pick in your opinion? Gabe and I touched a little bit on Cardinal Tate. We weren't expecting him to go to the Titans at number 4. What do you think? What has been your biggest surprise of the day?
I think Fano at number 9 just now was a little surprising. I think the Saints have a lot of needs. Downs was there. I think there was some good alignment there. Kyle Lemon was also there. Or sorry, not the Saints, but the Browns taking Fano. I mean, it's been a crazy night, but that one kind of caught me off guard. I feel like if you're gonna go line, I would have gone with Naomi Noah or Ione first. And also Downs just sitting right there. Don't know how you got that. And then if you are just gonna go best friend with Ruben Bain also sitting right there. So that one kind of caught me off.
I was going to say, speaking of Ruben Bain, the Cowboys are now on the clock at number 11. They just traded away Micah Parsons not too long ago. Do you think Ruben Bain is the pick here at number 11?
I think it's got to be. I think, where are we with 11 was the Dolphins. That just happened?
No, 11's right now.
11's now.
11's now. We just had 10. Francis Mauigoa went to the Giants. Here we are with the Cowboys at number 11. Do you take best available with Caleb Downs, or do you go a guy like Ruben Bain?
I feel like if you're the Cowboys, I think you got to go Downs here. I think they did a pretty good job in solidifying their D-line. Ezra Rocky's looked really good off the edge. They got Williams in the trade. I feel like they've got some guys there. The secondary, it's been a consistent issue for the Cowboys. I mean, we all know the offense puts up 40 and then this 40 drops right on their heads. And yeah, I think if Downs is gone, maybe with a cornerback, maybe McCoy, maybe Hood. But with Downs here, I think that's no brainer.
I also think it's a very good pick with Downs here if you're the Cowboys. I mean, Gabe and I were even projecting him to be top 5, top 6 because of how good he is as a prospect. He's one of those players that's pretty much bust-proof. We talked about him and Jeremiah Love, how there's a high ceiling, but also there is a very high floor for them. They're going to be very good in the NFL. Whether they immediately fit in with their teams or not, they are going to be good NFL players. So with that being said, looking at guys like Ruben Bain, we talked about how deep this class is in terms of edges. Where do you think Ruben Bain now goes if Caleb Downs is a Cowboy?
I think Bain's got to be the next pick then. I think Bain should have been a top 10 pick, to be honest with you. I understand. I think people are concerned about his arm length, but to be honest, I think the production speaks for itself. I mean, we saw all season in Miami what it is that he's capable of, and just his ability to get after the quarterback, the tenacity he has. I mean, you can't really teach that. I feel like there's no way he doesn't become a really solid contributor in the NFL.
Yeah. So the reason why you were confused a little bit is because I was also confused. The Dolphins actually traded the number 11 pick to the Cowboys, so now they have both 11 and 12. They have the back-to-back picks. If you're the Cowboys, do you select both Bain and Downs?
I think you do, and I think that's the reason you make that trade. I think if you have the number 12 trade, what do you really need the 11 for as well? Unless 2 players you didn't expect to be there fall your way. So I think that would really explain that trade. And I'm curious to know what the Dolphins got for it.
Yeah, we will find out the return shortly. I mean, currently we're waiting on the update. All we know is the Cowboys came up to select, and we weren't really sure why. I mean, you said, why aren't the Dolphins on the clock? That's why. They traded the pick. We'll find out the trade details shortly, but I mean, I think this duo could be great if you're the Dallas Cowboys. Both Bain and Downs, guys that went against each other in the Cotton Bowl, and both of them played really well. We saw Downs had 2 forced fumbles. That was a first for a college football playoff game. But also Bain, him and Akeem Mesidor were phenomenal all season coming off the edge for Miami.
They absolutely were. I mean, and this is kind of my point is they're good guys on the board. Right? Ione's there, Falk is there, Sadiq is there. They're solid players. It's a really good draft class, but if you're going to move heaven and earth, and I'm sure they gave up a lot to move all the way up from all into the 11th pick without giving up your 12. So that means they probably gave up a future first pick or maybe even a player or something along those lines. They're paying a heavy price. And I think you only do that unless you're going after a player, really in this case 2 players, that you think transcend a typical 10 to 15 pick players that proved all season long that they are arguably the best defensive players in the nation, which is what we saw from Downs and Bain. Players that you know are going to be superstars, players that are sliding for reasons that are kind of stupid. Arms has, I understand it. Downs injured, people are scared. But at the end of the day, we know what these players can do. And yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's got to be these two, and I think they're both going to be studs.
Yeah. Now let's step aside from talking about the draft for a second, at least the draft itself. How has your experience been so far? Gabe and I talked about how phenomenal it's been, how they have student media here covering the NFL draft. What have you been up to so far at the NFL draft, and how's your experience been?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting experience. I started out the day doing some street interviews. That was my first time doing that. I was asking a bunch of fans who they thought was the best player they thought was overrated, player they thought were underrated. Got a wide range of answers. Got some deep polls I wasn't really expecting. Got some not so great polls that I maybe was expecting. So that was really interesting. And then since then, I've been writing that article, and then we were in the press conference room for a little bit. They still haven't done any press conferences yet. They may have done Bailey's, but we've been waiting for Jeremiah Love, and the 10th pick had come up, and they still hadn't done it. So being in the room was cool, and I'll probably head back there in a little bit. But the street interviews for sure were definitely the coolest part. Good to hear the fans' perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we walked a little bit around the outside area. We were in the pit. That was pretty cool, seeing not only how many fans were there, but how immersive the experience was. Seeing some of the behind-the-scenes stuff was pretty cool. I mean, they had so many different experiences available for the fans, but certainly this will be one that I will personally never forget. For us, I mean, other than that, we've really been exploring. We've been looking on the field. There's been a lot of interactive experiences. There's a field goal kicking challenge. There's a bunch of different activities for the kids and all the children here to be doing. So, I mean, overall, I feel like it's been a great experience.
It really has, for sure.
Yeah. Now, outside the Cowboys, we talked about teams that have made selections. What do you think about some of those picks that have been off the board so far? Actually, we'll get to that in a second, as Roger Goodell will make the first selection for the Cowboys now.
The 11th pick, the 2026 NFL Draft. The Dallas Cowboys select Caleb Downs. Defensive back.
So Downs is a Cowboy, as expected, as we talked about. We'll get to them more in a second because they do have the 12th pick. But some of those picks up until then, so 1 through 10, I should say, other than Downs, what are your thoughts on some of those picks? Do you think, one, Jeremiah Love at number 3 was a good pick, or are there any other picks that you thought were really good fits for their team?
Well, I think the Giants really lucked out with Arvell. I think that's going to go down as possibly one of the biggest steals in the draft. I was a little bit down on Reese, just a touch, at least compared to David Bailey. I think that Reese lacks some of the traditional edge technique that Bailey has. And I even had him lower than Styles just because I think Styles is more of a coverage linebacker. But what Reese gives you is he gives you that versatility. With Bailey, he's going to play on the edge, and he's not going to play inside. Styles, you could probably put him on the edge, but he's mostly going to play at linebacker. With Reese, you have that versatility. So the Giants now, you have Burns, you have Carter. I think maybe they move Reese more inside, in which he could probably develop to be just as good as Styles, if not better. And then say you lose Burns, say you lose Carter, Thibodeau, whatever, now you have a guy. You don't have to go out and get another guy. You can just move Reese to the edge. So if you're taking him as a pure edge, I think Bailey's better. If you're taking him as a pure linebacker, I think Styles is better. But for him to fall to that 5th pick and for the versatility he has, I think that was a really good move.
Yeah, and now going back to the Cowboys, talk about the Cowboys a little. Obviously, a couple of years ago, they were phenomenal. They missed the playoffs last year, but coming into this next season, they just drafted Caleb Downs, and they are presumably, according to us, going to draft Ruben Bain. How do you think their outlook for next season looks now, having a guy like Downs and maybe a guy like Bain coming in? We saw how good the offense was. We talked about how they can score 40, but they could also give up 40 on a given night. So for them, I mean, their offense is spectacular. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Dak Prescott. But how do you think they will look next year?
I think it's hard to say, as it often is with the Cowboys. I think, number one, George Pickens has been a concern. There's been a lot of contention over that franchise tag. He has refused to sign the tag. Jerry Jones has refused to extend him. There's been a lot of rumors over trade talks. I'm a big fan of Ryan Flournoy, but I have a lot less faith in the Cowboys if he's their wide receiver number 2 going into the season. As for the defense, I think they need another corner. I think that their cornerback room is a little weak right now. I think Siobhan Rebel has some potential. We know how up and down Deron Bland can be. and they don't really have a solid nickel. I think getting Downs was huge because their secondary has been an issue. You can put Downs at that corner position, or you can put him at safety. And I think you want one more edge rusher. As a Rocky's been good, Williams has been good. But if you can get one more guy, like if they were to take Bain here, and then I guess maybe get lucky in a corner and secure Pickens. I mean, you never do know with the Cowboys. That's the thing with them. You know, every year they say they're going to be great, and every year it kind of seems like they're not. And I mean, they're in a very competitive conference. I mean, even the Lions missed out in the playoffs. A lot of people have the Lions going really far. It's a talented conference, and I don't know if the Cowboys have done enough this offseason to be better than they were last year. I think they made some. Downs is a good move, and Bain would be a good move. And Kenny Pickens gives him a chance. Yeah. But it's so hard to say.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, for the Cowboys, maybe even cornerback can be available. You think they could potentially take a guy like Jermod McCoy here instead of Ruben Bain?
I think not, just because of the injury standpoint. I think that Downs' injury is a big reason why he slid, and people are really worried about McCoy's injury. I think that's why he slid a bit. I think that's part of why Delane jumped him. So I think to take two injury secondary guys seems a little risky. So I don't think they'll go McCoy here, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they go corner second round. If Colton Hood could slide, that's a name I've seen a lot. Avion Terrell from Clemson. You know, if you take a guy in the second round, you could plug him into the starter, especially they have a really weak nickel position. There's another place they could go. So I don't think they would go McCoy here. I think maybe they wait on corner. I think it has to be.
Yeah. I mean, just correcting myself because we got the full trade details. We didn't get them at first. Miami and Dallas ended up swapping picks. So the Cowboys don't actually have this pick anymore. It's been very crazy. I mean, for Gabe and I, we originally thought that the Browns still had pick number 6. And when the Chiefs were up to pick, we were confused. But nonetheless, here come the Dolphins up to pick.
2026 NFL Draft. The Miami Dolphins select Caden Proctor, tackle, Alabama.
So the Dolphins go with Caden Proctor. Ruben Bain is still on the board, but certainly this is a very interesting pick. A lot of people had concerns for Proctor. I mean, now that he's the third tackle taken in this draft, how do you think Proctor will be in Miami?
I have mixed feelings. I like Proctor a lot. I think Proctor has a lot of talent. Obviously, incredibly athletic for a guy of his size. I think he's going to be talented. With the 12th pick, though, when you're a team like the Dolphins and you just need talent and you need best available, why you trade away from Downs, why you don't take Bain, and then don't take someone maybe like a Kenyon Sadiq or a Makai Leonard, like an immediate playmaker. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure that Proctor's the best alignment there. I mean, the Dolphins kind of need a line, not just tackle. They really need every alignment. Ione was sitting right there, who I think is a little bit better. I like Proctor, but I think they could have traded down. I think they could have traded down more if that was their guy. Otherwise, I think they should have just taken Downs 11.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, and for the Cowboys, the return was they got pick number 11, and Miami ended up getting 12, and then number 177 and 180. So, nonetheless, Ruben Bain, will he be staying in Miami? Will the Dolphins trade up again? Probably not. But for now, Caden Proctor is a Miami Dolphin, and I mean, that's a pretty interesting pick. You just touched on it a little bit, but we've seen the flashes of Caden Proctor. If you gave him the ball on offense, I mean, we saw how much of a monster he is, even playing when he got the ball, not just protecting the quarterback for Alabama. So there have been some concerns about his weight, but overall, I do think this is a very good pick for the Dolphins. But I do agree. You could have gone lower, considering not only the tackle class, but at number 12, I feel like that is a little too high, but it's nonetheless still a good pick for Miami.
Yeah, I agree. As for the weight, I was doing a little bit of research into this. He has been able to put on and take off an incredibly large amount of weight. He started at, I want to say, like 350, and then made his way up to like 400, and then got down to like 360. And they're saying that he's like leaner than he's been. He put on a bunch of muscle, lost a bunch of fat. I'm not exactly sure, but my point is I think the size won't be an issue. I think he can put on weight. and be that tackle, or who knows, with his versatility, maybe he can lose some and be a guard. And I think the other interesting part about him, which you touched on, is his ability to make plays. Alabama was giving him the ball at running back, they threw him a screen pass. And I mean, it's kind of fair. Look at him. Like, you're not going to bring him down if you're a quarterback or a safety. And I think it would be really, really interesting to see if an NFL team can utilize him that way. Because I think that could really be untapped potential. I almost wish he went to the Lions, because I'd love to see what Dan Campbell could do with him. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty interesting pick, I'm going to say less. I think it's a good pick. We both agree it's a pretty good pick. At number 12, maybe not. However, moving on, 13 now is the Rams. The Rams last year made it to the NFC Championship, but fell short to the eventual Super Bowl champions. Who do you think the Rams could go with here? They just traded for Trent McDuffie, so obviously quarterback isn't the issue. I wouldn't necessarily say that quarterback's the issue as well, other than cornerback, because obviously they have the MVP. Who do you think they go with here? They're a very talented team. They're projected to be a top 3 team in the NFL this year again. If you're the Rams, who's the guy?
I really think it should be Mekhi Lemon. I've looked at some mocks, and a lot of people have their line here, but I've looked at their line. I think it's pretty solid. They don't really have a weak spot. We've seen the last 2 years how good it's been. I think when you're a team like the Lions and you have a lot of options, you don't really overthink it. You take a player that you know is going to be a big contributor for years. I like the Seahawks when they took JSN with Metcalf and Lockett. They didn't really need another receiver, but they didn't really need a whole lot else. So they just took a really, really talented player that they knew they were going to find ways to use because he's that talented. And now look at him being the wide receiver 1 on a championship team. Devontae Adams isn't going to be around forever. Honestly, we don't even know if he'll be on the Rams to start the season. And right now, their wide receiver 3 is Kenyatta Mumfield. And they're disrespecting Kenyatta Mumfield, but Mekhi Lemon would be a huge improvement. And I think there's a case for Bain just from the sheer best player available. I think he's clearly far and away the best player available. But they have such a good edge rush. They have Young, they have Verse, they have Fisk, they have Turner. They don't really need that. They got McDuffie. Corner was the one thing I was going to say they should take. They've addressed that. Maybe I'd say safety. If Downs was there, they could maybe use another safety. Downs is gone. Too early for Keeneman. I think it's got to be Lemon.
Yeah. And then how good would Lemon be as a compliment to Puka? Obviously, you throw the ball to Puka and he's grabbing it no matter what. Puka's been phenomenal, especially this past season for the Rams. But yeah, I definitely agree. Mekhi Lemon would be a great pick. Some even argue he's the number 1 wide receiver, although Tate went at number 4 and Jordan Tyson already flew off the board. I think Lemon's a great choice for them, and I definitely agree with you. We just got word from Gabe, who's sitting beside us, that we also might have the opportunity to talk to some of those OSU guys, since 4 of them have already been drafted in the top 11. So that will be cool. So maybe stay tuned for that. We might take a quick break here on the YouTube and on the Mixler. But Joey, for now, thank you very much for joining us once again. Joey Bardak, our VP of podcasting here for SGSR. Thank you for hopping on, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your experience.
Thanks, Ave. I had a great time.
Of course. So I will be taking the show solo for a second here, just recapping some of the picks and some of what we've seen so far today at the NFL Draft. Starting off, the Raiders chose Fernando Mendoza, which wasn't a shock to anyone. He was projected to be the number 1 pick. Then, at number 3, we saw Jeremiah Love, who not a lot of people expected to go number 3, ended up going to the Cardinals. A pick before that was the Jets, and they took David Bailey, so that wasn't as much as a surprise as people might have thought. But David Bailey went to the Jets at 4. The Titans chose Cardinal Tate. This was me and Gabe's, at least, first shock of the day. We thought Tate was going to be, more in that 6 to 8 range. For Tate, obviously, there's not a lot of flaws to his game. He is a pure route runner, and he can also go up and grab some balls. We saw him against Wisconsin make a phenomenal play for Tate. He has been very good, and that's why he was chosen at number 4 for the Titans. So, with that being said, we are now on to pick 13. The Rams will have it, but going over some of what we've seen so far in the draft. We talked about the first 4. Arvell Reese went to the Giants at 5. Sonny Styles was originally linked to the Giants. However, with Reese available, the Giants took him. I feel like that was a great pick. They have Brian Burns. They have Abdul Carter, who they just chose last year, but Reese is phenomenal. He will certainly be an X factor for them. While he can play the edge, he's also an outside linebacker. So for Reese, that's a good pick. At 6, Mansour Delane goes to the Chiefs. The Chiefs traded with the Browns. They gave up a first, third, and fifth, that first being their 9th overall pick, to the Browns. And in return, they got Mansour Delane, a quarterback, I should say. Their biggest issue, the center of their problems last year was, I guess, not being healthy. They didn't have Patrick Mahomes towards the end of the season. They will have, assuming a healthy Mahomes come this year, but also they will have Travis Kelce back. Travis Kelce announced he will be returning. They gave up Trent McDuffie to the Rams for a first, but here they are. They just took Mansour Delane at corner. He was projected as the number 1 corner, but for now, we will hear who the Rams will take at number 13.
NFL draft. The Los Angeles Rams select Ty Simpson.
Wow. That right here is the biggest shock to us. Ty Simpson goes at number 13 to the Rams. That is a pretty big shock. Me and Joey were just expecting a guy like even cornerback help. Jermon McCoy, some people didn't have him even at 13, but for them to select Ty Simpson, Matt Stafford just won the MVP last year. I wish Gabe were sitting right here next to me to talk about this, but that is, other than Tate, that has been our biggest shock so far. Ty Simpson, the quarterback for Alabama, lands at 13. A lot of people were expecting, a lot of experts were expecting Simpson to be drafted towards the end of that first round, maybe some teams trading, but this is certainly a power move for the Rams to select Ty Simpson at number 13 with Matthew Stafford being their number 1 guy. Just won the MVP, yes. He is getting up there in age, but with the quarterback class next year, why not select the quarterback next year? I mean, the Rams are projected to be a top 3 team, as Joey and I discussed. This has been a very interesting draft so far, but speaking of interesting, I will go back to talking about some of these picks. Sonny Styles ended up at number 7 to the Washington Commanders, Jordan Tyson at number 8 to the Saints, Spencer Fano to the Cleveland Browns, Francis Maui-Noah to the Giants at number 10, Caleb Downs at 11, Proctor at 12, and now at 13 is Ty Simpson. So back-to-back Alabama players have flown off the board. Very interesting choice here from the Rams. I don't know if you heard everyone in the room here, but everyone was shocked. I mean, for the Rams, they traded for this pick, and we saw how they made it to the NFC Championship last season. They fell short to the Seattle Seahawks, the eventual Super Bowl champions, but this brings up the Baltimore Ravens, and for the Ravens, a lot of questions to be answered. The biggest one is, do they draft an offensive lineman? We saw a few offensive linemen that have gone off the board so far. A lot of them are expecting offensive linemen, but then again, Ruben Bain is still available. They just picked up Trey Hendrickson in free agency, so will they go with another edge rusher to complement Trey Hendrickson? We will see, as we will take a quick break on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio. Don't go anywhere, both on the Mixler and on the YouTube. We'll be back shortly as Gabe and I will take a break here, potentially going to be talking to some of the Ohio State players. So stay tuned. We will be back shortly. And thank you very much for tuning in for now. We will be back in just a second. And we just realized that we've been muted that entire time. So what we've missed so far, a couple of picks that we've missed. We just
Let's
saw,
keep piling on, right?
I was about to say, for those of you tuning in on the Mixler, you heard us. But for those of us joining us on YouTube, here we go. We're back. Thank you to our audience for joining in. We apologize. We have been muted for the last 10 minutes or so, but just in case you've not been tuning in to the Mixler and you've been tuning in on YouTube, what we've missed so far: the Ravens, the Jets, the Bucks, and now the Jets. I just said the Jets again.
Detroit Lions. So it went Ravens, Buccaneers, Jets, Lions. And then I had an extended break as well because I was trying to do stand-ups over in the other room. Found out that was a little bit of a disaster in terms of our standing at the draft. But nevertheless, Oliva Vega-Ione went to the Baltimore Ravens at number 14. Think that was a really good pick for Baltimore. They have a guy in Daniel Falele who left, followed John Harbaugh to New York. Tyler Linderbaum left, who was the center. So they had a big hole to fill in the interior offensive line. Ravens, a team that likes to run the ball. We'll see if that's different now with a different head coaching regime, but really like that pick. I'll let you take it away with Ruben Bain Jr., who slid a little bit number 15 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, Joey and I were expecting Ruben Bain to be picked maybe a little higher, maybe at number 11, but the Cowboys went best available in Caleb Downs Bain. He has proven to be a very good edge rusher. We talked right before you left, Gabe. We talked about how dominant that defensive line for Miami was last year. So that was a very good pick for the Buccaneers in Bain. But right after that, as we just saw, unfortunately, we were muted. But Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon, ended up going to the New York Jets. Obviously, they had pick 2 as well, but they addressed the offense this time. I was talking a little bit how I thought, maybe Mekhi Lemon might be the choice here. He will complement Garrett Wilson, but they go with the tight end. So this brings up the Detroit Lions, who were 14-3 just a couple of years ago, missed the playoffs last year. A lot of people were expecting them to be the number 1 team in the NFC North. Who do you think they go with here, Gabe?
They're kind of in QB purgatory, and I know this is about to be who do they need on their team to be better. I think they're in a tough spot because you have a guy like Jared Goff who might not be good enough to win you a Super Bowl. And I think that's a really tough spot to be in, but you have a very talented roster around you if you're the Detroit Lions. Monroe Freeling's still on the board. I'm not super high on him. I know some people are, and Detroit needs a tackle. Let's be honest. They need to protect Jared Goff and have a guy on the edge that can kind of secure the edge for an explosive back like Jahmyr Gibbs. So I would probably go offensive line here. I know it kind of just turned into a Jared Goff bashing session, so I'll try to lay off of that a little bit.
Yeah, let's take a step back as the Lions have made their pick, and you'll see the Vikings come up shortly after at 18. But for now, thank you to our YouTube audience for joining in. And Mason Jarrell is wondering, what are our thoughts on the Browns' next choice? Who does it need to be? What should that be? We saw them take, at the time, we thought they were going to take a tackle at number 6. They moved up to number 9 and took Spencer Fano. So for the Browns, who does that need to be, Gabe?
Offensive line's a little thin now. If you're not a Monroe Freeling guy, it's kind of rough in terms of offensive line the rest of the way. So good job on Cleveland trading back, getting draft capital, and getting your top tackle at the number 9 spot. Puts them in an interesting position, though.
I was about to say they have picked number 24. Sorry to interrupt you. So keep that in mind, number 24.
And you know what I like with that pick?
Who would that be?
Todd Monken. He's just like hard-nosed football guy, offensive mind. They need weapons on the outside for Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, insert any rookie quarterback in the 2027 class who's going to be throwing him the ball. Give me a guy like Denzel Boston. He's a big guy. He can get up there and get those contested catches. Cleveland needs a number 1 receiver. I don't know if he's that guy, but he's definitely going to be able to be a high-end number 2 in the NFL at the next level. So I think that's where they should go there, regardless of if it's Boston or if they want to go with a guy like Omar Cooper or a guy with more speed like Casey Concepcion or Zachariah Branch. You can kind of branch out in different directions there for the receiver position, but you need guys to throw to because Harold Fannin, as great as he is, you can't just throw to him 20, 30 times a game. Would be impressive, but wouldn't win you a lot of football games.
Yeah, and we saw 2 wide receivers fly off in the first top 10, that being Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson. But for the Browns, certainly another offensive weapon would be pretty good, especially in the wide receiver room. We saw Harold Fannin Jr., their tight end, really take a step forward this year as a rookie. But for now, The Detroit Lions with number 17 are going to select, according to Roger Goodell, in just a second.
The NFL is proud to be part of the global community of wish makers, taking action.
And also keep in mind that another NFC North team in the Vikings are still on the clock right now, so it will be a quick turnaround as we did have some live music. Pretty good music, I will say, Gabe.
Pretty good music that our audience probably couldn't hear because we were on mute for a little bit. Whoops.
You know what? We're here. We're back. And you know what? We got it. And so do the Detroit Lions, who are now selecting, hopefully anytime soon.
We're doing a Make-A-Wish announcement, too, which is pretty cool. That's awesome, man. Huge Lions fan. You get to make your pick at the NFL draft. Could be a future superstar.
With the 17th pick in the 2026
Here we go.
NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Blake Miller, tackle, left side.
Wow, they kind of went off the menu.
Yeah, I mean, for the Lions, we knew they needed some help at tackle. Protecting Jared Goff last year was one of their key issues. You know, you have Penei Sewell, and he could play either left or right tackle. So getting any tackle here, whether that was a left tackle, right tackle, any offensive tackle, was the move for the Lions. I believe they have Jared Goff. You touched a little bit on him. I won't get to Jared Goff. You have Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield, but I feel like this is a good pick for the Lions.
I'm a little concerned with his pass blocking, but when you have some decent pass blockers already on that Detroit offensive line, it becomes less of an issue. Blake Miller, he's a big boy. He's really good in zone blocking schemes, at least in the running game. And I think with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who's that explosive and he kind of has that quick twitch to instantly turn to a different zone, I think that's pretty good for Detroit's scheme. That also still leaves Freeling on the board for a number team to snag, but I think the Lions said, hey, we need a tackle. We're in a spot to still get our guy. We'll get a guy that might be projected a little bit lower, but he fits the scheme better. I think that's what Detroit just did there.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and that now brings up the Vikings, who have pick number 19. They've already made their pick. The pick is in. Who do you think the pick is here for? One of the other four teams, or three teams, I should say, in the NFC North.
Vikings are interesting because they're in a spot where I don't know where they're going to be because Kevin O'Connell has taken this team above what their talent level is, I think, for a lot of years. I think he's one of the best offensive minds in all of professional football. But we don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Could be Kyler Murray, who just came over. Could be J.J. McCarthy, who has shown a few flashes here and there, but at the same time hasn't been healthy, hasn't been consistent. But we're about to hear it right now.
In the 2026 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Caleb Banks, defensive end, Florida.
Caleb Banks.
Another one of those defensive ends in this draft. We talked about how deep it is in terms of those edge rushers and those guys that can really make a difference on defense. I mean, we saw, especially in the top 10, how many of them flew off the board. Ruben Bain went at number 15, but I think this is a very good pick. Who, I mean, last year or a couple years ago, we saw who the Vikings took in Dallas Turner. That didn't really pan out for them. So I think this is a great pick for the Vikings.
Again, a guy who was rated a little bit lower, got drafted a little higher than we expected, but Caleb Banks, I think in terms of need, is what Minnesota had to go with, because at the moment they're a 3-4 team, but their interior defensive line, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Jalen Redmond, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, and regardless of how you feel about all those guys, you don't have one who's just like a true difference maker. In a division where you got to stop the run in the NFC North, all three teams do a really good job of that against Minnesota. So getting a guy like that at this spot, I think it works out. And again, he's a guy that fits the scheme. He has some promise, and Minnesota was really hurting up front on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and now moving quicker, because the picks are now moving quicker. At first, it was a little, let's take our time. First, top 10, those were flying not as fast, but we're now flying to the Eagles, who are now selecting, because the Panthers at 19 already made their selection. Roger Goodell will be up soon to make the announcement at number 19. But if you're the Panthers, who are you going with? Because they had a pretty up and down season, and what's the pick here?
I think the Panthers and Bryce Young specifically really started to hit their stride last season, and they showed a good amount of promise. I think they're a team that could really run away with the NFC South next season. Now, Tampa Bay just got Reuben Bain Jr. They still have a lot of good playmakers on offense, even with Rachaad White and Mike Evans leaving. But at the same time, if you're Carolina, you got Teteroa McMillan last year in the first round. He's an absolute stud, but why not give Bryce Young more weapons to work with? Mekhi Lemon, I think, is a great wide receiver, too, to be on the opposite end of T-Mac. So I say you go wide receiver here. You really start to build up that offense, especially in the weapons department.
Definitely. That would now be back-to-back wide receivers in the first round for the Carolina Panthers. I mean, yeah, they made the playoffs last year. They were a wild card team. They ended up facing the Rams, and not everything went in terms or according to plan. But in terms of the Panthers, I agree. Bryce Young showed a lot of good flashes, and certainly this would be a great compliment for Teteroa McMillan.
For sure, and there's also the direction you can go because the defense has actually gotten a lot better. When you have a guy like Derek Brown up front, such an easy name. I can't believe I stumbled over one that easily, especially since I spammed the Francis Maui Noah hype train earlier. Derek Brown, again, superstar up front. You could also go on the defensive line again, get a guy like Keldrick Falk, who I think is really underrated in this class. He has all of the athletic and raw skills that you need out of a premier edge rusher, and they're still hurting a little bit in that department. So you could go there. You could get a guy to protect the quarterback, but like I said, it's becoming more and more thin in the offensive line department. So there's a few ways you can go here, for sure.
I mean, other than Keldrick Falk, you got a guy like Cassius Howell, who will probably fly off the board in the first round. Very quick, I just want to talk about the Eagles because they are currently on the clock as well for number 20. But for the Eagles, who do you think the Eagles need here? Super Bowl champions a couple years ago, ended up not living up to those expectations last year. We talked about A.J. Brown earlier, how he might become a New England Patriot. Those rumors have been swirling around. But if you're the Eagles at number 20, who are you taking?
Trying to think of when the last time the Eagles really had like an elite slot guy was, and I think it's been since Deshaun Jackson. I think you get a guy like Omar Cooper Jr. I can just see him in an Eagles uniform. Again, he's like a surefire hands guy that can get open underneath. He was able to click a lot with Fernando Mendoza at Indiana this season, and he was a huge part of why they won the national championship against the Miami Hurricanes back in January. Now, the Eagles are probably going to lose A.J. Brown in some sort of trade. At least that's the anticipation. Seems like there's been a lot of drama going on with him and the Eagles camp. So I think you have to get another receiver because you can't have Devonta Smith carrying the entire work.
I was about to say Smith was a former Heisman winner, and for Cooper, he played alongside a Heisman winner this past season. And I'm not going to go out and say Fernando Mendoza is the reason why Omar Cooper Jr. was great. Omar Cooper Jr. is great because of how good he set those expectations for himself. I mean, for Omar Cooper Jr., yes, you're playing on a team that has a Heisman winner, but nonetheless, he's a good player. And right now, we will find out who the Panthers take at number 19.
He ran a 4.39.
Ro Freeling. So that was kind of a tear break in the offensive tackle position, at least in terms of the consensus of the draft analysts. He was kind of like that last guy before there was a big drop off. So, Avi, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are for this because Carolina, they've gotten better on the offensive line, but there's still some work to do for sure.
Yeah, I feel like this is nonetheless a pretty good pick. But if you're the Panthers, the one place you could have needed was wide receiver. We just talked about Omar Cooper Jr., but even a guy that could come in and make an immediate impact on the offense, such as Monroe Freeling, is also a good pick. It's a safe pick. We talked about how consistent some of these guys have been in terms of on the offensive line, but nonetheless, I think this is a good pick for the Panthers.
I'm going to float this idea out. I'm not sure if you hate it or not. What if you pair up Toledo defensive backs and Quinion Mitchell, who's done a lot of great things for the Eagles in his time there in his young career in Philadelphia? What if you pair him up with a guy like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, who, again, it's tough for these defensive backs at small schools to really make a name for themselves, but the fact that McNeil-Warren has been getting this much buzz, he's actually been rising up the rankings as this process has gone on. you got to at least think about it. Yeah.
I definitely think they need to consider it. But at the same time, if you're the Eagles, you got to think about what went wrong last year. Was it Saquon having a down year compared to the year before where he had a monster season?
Now, let me say
We will
this.
see. But
Could the
first,
Jets have a trade up their sleeve?
they're on the board right now.
Picks are flying now.
Yeah, I mean, those first 10 were a little slow, but here we are for number 20.
Maybe the Jets are going to just stick and pick at 33 and hope they finally hit on a second-round wide receiver.
So they do go
Maybe
wide
they're
receiver
actually
in
gonna hit
Mekhi
on a
Lemon.
second-round wide receiver.
I mean, Gabe, this certainly confirms that A.J. Brown will most likely not be an Eagle next year.
I don't know if he said his goodbyes yet, but I think it's probably going to happen now, Avi. Mekhi Lemon, great prospect and great value here. Howie Roseman does it again. Devonta Smith is going to be the main guy for sure. Absolutely, at least in year one of this Mekhi Lemon experience. But he was a guy that really transcended this Lincoln Riley offense at USC this year. Jaden Mayava, the quarterback, was one of the most explosive quarterbacks in all of the Big Ten because of a guy like Mekhi Lemon, who was in the Biletnikoff race and was able to win some hardware there, at least in terms of the USC production. But he's a guy who almost had 1,200 yards last year, 11 touchdowns. And when USC really needed to make plays through the air, which they did a lot, I mean, they were the number one team in passing offense in the Big Ten. Mekhi Lemon was a huge reason for that. He can probably do the same thing.
Keep in mind, Mekhi Lemon won the Biletnikoff over a guy like Jeremiah Smith. So that says a lot about his draft stock. We've seen how much of an impact these first-round draft picks can make. Just a couple of years ago, before they won the Super Bowl, who did the Eagles take that helped them in that Super Bowl win? None other than Cooper DeJean. These early picks for the Eagles have paid off. Will Mekhi Lemon be that X factor that the Eagles need? I think so. I think this is a great pick if you're the Eagles. Although it does kind of give a somber goodbye to a guy like A.J. Brown, it's nonetheless a great pick.
Well, and when you look at least at the, I don't want to say character side of things because I really get where A.J. Brown is coming from with all this. But when you draft a rookie, I don't think the demand for targets is as important as it is if you're compared to a guy like A.J. Brown who's been around the block. He's been a multiple-time Pro Bowler. I think it's a little easier to stomach, at least as a wide receiver, too. Devonta Smith obviously going to be the clear option there, but I think you get a guy who's probably not going to complain about targets too much. He's on a cheaper deal. He's younger. Is he going to be what A.J. Brown has been in his excellent career? I think that's a lot to ask of him, but I think that's the right pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. They really needed a wide receiver. They're contending right now. Mekhi Lemon fits the bill for both of those things.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about the differences between Mekhi Lemon and A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's a big get. Don't get that wrong. Mekhi Lemon, a little bit smaller than him, I will say. At 5'11", 192, he's not as physical. He lined up in the slot a lot last year for the USC Trojans, but I mean, this is still a great pick for the Eagles as, like you said, will he get enough targets early on? Who knows? Probably not, right? We will see if he slots in at that number 2 or even lines up in the slot. But, I mean, you called it just a couple of picks ago. Even a guy like Omar Cooper Jr., who primarily plays in the slot, is a good option.
Well, that brings up the hometown team, the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick number 21. Avi, there's a few ways that you can go with this pick. They kind of need everything on offense at this moment. They don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be next year just yet. But also, they usually take some defensive players, at least historically, in the first round. Who are you liking here?
I mean, they have Cam Newton on the defensive line, so I don't think defensive line is the issue.
He's old, though.
Yeah, and we just saw Ty Simpson fly off the board, and Matthew Stafford just won the MVP last year, so that could be the option. But I think right here might be kind of a weird pick, but maybe even at the edge, someone who could complement TJ Watt. I mean, we just talked earlier about how good this edge class has been. Maybe a guy like Casey Concepcion, someone who's speedy to complement TJ Watt, could be the pick here. I made a couple of bold predictions here so far. Maybe that could be the pick if you're the hometown team.
I think firing Mike Tomlin made it clear that this is not going to be the same team next year in Pittsburgh. I think they're going for a big reset. Now, whether that's going to be, they're just going to try to go flashy, get a speedy guy like Concepcion, maybe. I think a guy that they could definitely go after is Peter Woods with Clemson. He was a guy who was highly touted coming in to this year. He kind of fell down the draft rankings. I still think the athleticism is there. He's a really twitchy guy for his size on the interior defensive line. And I think he can wreak a lot of havoc, especially against some of these prominent running backs in the AFC North, like Derrick Henry, like Quinshon Judkins, and Chase Brown, who's kind of come onto the scene from the Bengals.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're the Steelers here, if you're going to go defensive player, I just talked about Casey Concepcion, but at the same time, I mean, if you're taking an edge, you could also go with a guy like TJ Parker. He didn't necessarily have the best season last year compared to what he did 2 years ago, but a guy like Casey Concepcion could be a difference maker.
Absolutely. And again, the Steelers, they need a quarterback. They probably need a running back. They don't have a lot at receiver. Their offensive line is a little bit shaky. Like, their offense was not good last season. I think that's a big reason why they finished where they usually do, around 500, a little bit better than that. That can only get you so far. Firing Mike Tomlin, bringing in McCarthy as the head coach, I think they're ready to hit the reset button and really just destroy everything and build it up.
Yeah. I also made a mistake there. I said Casey Concepcion. I was caught up in our wide receiver talk not too long ago. I meant to say Cassius Howell, the edge. But certainly, even Concepcion, or even like a guy like Omar Cooper Jr., for wide receiver for the Steelers could be the pick. I mean, they have DK Metcalf, but a wide receiver could be in play here for the Steelers. You never know.
I only have a Mesidor pick too, because depending on how the Steelers go throughout the season, a guy like TJ Watt who wants to be on a winning team, who's getting a little bit older, maybe he wants to play for a different team potentially down the line. And if you take an edge rusher who's a little bit younger, I don't know. Akeem Mesidor really sticks out to me as a guy who just feels like a Steeler, a late bloomer who can really get after the quarterback. But I think there's still a lot of talent on the board in this late first round at the edge position.
That's really been one of the biggest concerns about him is his age. I mean, he's already 25 years old. For Akeem Mesidor, he's a phenomenal player. Don't get me wrong. We raved about Ruben Bain Jr. a little bit earlier, but nonetheless, still a good pick, even at 25 years old. We saw Tyler Shuck and the immediate impact he made being one of those older prospects.
Well, but for every single one of those players, like an Akeem Mesidor or Tyler Shuck, there's a Kenny Pickett. There's someone like that. So it's a high risk, high reward taking one of those older guys. And we're going to see more and more as, well, at least the COVID players are out of the door now. But with the weird transfer rules and eligibility rules coming up, we might see some more older prospects.
Yeah, and certainly this will be an interesting wrap to the first round.
Obviously, they didn't think very highly.
Pittsburgh, the hometown team, and they have a bunch of the high school players, at least probably the captains from all those hometowns, with their terrible towels on the screen.
Again, we're not in the interviews. We don't know the medicals. So it's always tough. But I would have taken a receiver there. LJ says Muji and Glenn will be fired in other ways.
So the Steelers opting to go on the offensive line with their pick, Max Ahenachor from Arizona State. What do you think?
Nonetheless, as much as they needed help at some of those other positions we talked about, I don't hate this pick. Addressing that offensive line, like some of the teams we've seen so far today, is a pretty safe option. We talked about it's not the most outstanding class in terms of top-tier offensive linemen, but all of these guys are just solid at the minimum. They're pretty good. I'm sure this will be a very good. I'll say I'm pretty sure it's going to age well for the Steelers with the safe offensive lineman pick.
When we talked about an older player on the defensive side with Akeem Mesidor, Max Ahenachor, redshirt senior, he started playing football in 2021. So he's only been playing football for 5 years. He's definitely a raw product as the Sun Devil tackle, top Sun Devil in this class other than Jordan Tyson. But I think with how effective the Sun Devils were with Tyson, with with their weapons in general, man, my brain is fried right now. Sam Levitt, the quarterback. I think there's a lot that you can like from this Arizona State offense. And Henachor was kind of a main guy and the anchor on the offensive line.
It's definitely been a long 2 hours, Gabe. We are about to hit the 2-hour mark of the live stream. We have been here for a long time now. We've had the full NFL draft experience and 7 hours. And on top of that, we are only at pick number 22 now. The Chargers will be making pick number 22, excuse me. They just made the selection. So this will bring up the Cowboys once again at 23. But for the Chargers, obviously some concerns around the offensive line for Justin Herbert. Who do you think the Chargers go with here at 22?
We talked about a little bit in the pre-draft hit. Caden McDonald's a guy that intrigues me a lot for the Chargers, and it's just because he fits what Jim Harbaugh wants out of his defensive linemen. Just gritty guys that plug up gaps and let the linebackers at the second level make the plays. Caden McDonald absolutely does that. And I think, at least on my end, I'm a guy who saw Caden McDonald do that time and time again. It didn't matter if it is against a guy like Vega on Penn State, where he is able to get a lot of tackles for loss, or if he is able to make plays tipping the ball against Miami. He is really a threat on the interior part of the line. Chargers kind of need him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And as we start to get closer towards the end of the draft, now being at pick 22, once again, we'd like to thank all of you guys for tuning in on both Mixlr and YouTube. We might make it to pick, I'd say 28 to say the least, because we are going to try getting some stand-ups as well. Lots of different cool experiences we have here. We posted a stand-up earlier on social media, so thank you once again to everyone tuning in. We appreciate all of your guys' support, but we are only at pick number 23. The last few have flown off the board. The first, I'd say 10 or so, once again, were a little slower. Some surprises. One of the big ones that we didn't talk about, at least me and you, was Ty Simpson at 13 to the Rams. What do you think about that one, Gabe?
I'm so conflicted with that because I'm not a big Ty Simpson guy. I'll be honest with you, truth be told. I love a landing spot. Sean McVay's a QB whisperer. There's no secret about it. Matthew Stafford doesn't have that much time left. Let's hear this pick, and then I'll revisit the Ty Simpson one.
The 2026 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Hakeem Mesidor.
Hakeem Mesidor goes to the Chargers. He is also a Jim Harbaugh guy, and they needed pass rush at times last season, and they need pass rushing to get better if they want to try to continue to compete for a Super Bowl.
Definitely. I think this is a very safe pick for the Chargers, despite his age. We saw how dominant he was on the other side of Ruben Bain for Miami last year. Good pick. But once again, I want to hear your input on one of the other LA teams, that being the Rams with Ty Simpson.
You're trying to get me fired on here, I think, Avi. Ty Simpson, I think, in terms of what he did with Alabama, like, I'm not in love with his arm. I think he has had some good throws, I would say, but how much of that is because Alabama has such a great team around him? He had great protection. That's not really an issue when you go to the Rams, I think, just because I think they're just so steady with what they do. If they went to a rebuilding team, I think it would have been a lot worse. But again, like the situation, don't really like the prospect. Again, the Rams kind of had house money to play with because Atlanta traded up for James Pierce last year to have that pick. So it's kind of a luxury pick. If Ty Simpson works out, cool, you have your next franchise quarterback. If not, you're going to need a quarterback probably in a few years. But either way, it was house money with that Atlanta pick.
This now brings up the Dallas Cowboys, who had pick number 11 and chose none other than Caleb Downs. So it's safe to assume that they're not going to choose a guy like Dylan Thielman or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. But who's your guy for the Cowboys here? Is it a guy like Jermod McCoy, who, I mean, Joey and I were talking about, they could have gone at number 11. Cornerback has been a big issue for the Cowboys as of late. We know how dominant their offense is. As Joey put it earlier, they can put up 40 points, but they can also give up more than 40 points. So, if you're the Cowboys, who are you going with here for pick number 23?
Tough spot to be at. Well, good spot for Dallas with this pick. I would say, Avi, the Cowboys are really in need of more defensive help, and lucky them. Jermod McCoy's right there. I can't believe for how much I was talking about Caleb Downs earlier, I missed that pick once he got drafted with the Cowboys trading up for that. But why not double dip? Make your secondary even better. And Jermod McCoy, a guy who's really good in man coverage, can probably get the job done. Maybe a quarterback one in this league, depending on if he can stay healthy. I would say that's probably the pick, and he's been on the board hanging there for a while. Why not get the best value like you did with Caleb Downs?
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't really seen that many weaknesses to Jeremiah McCoy's game other than Jeremiah Smith maybe last year in the first round of the playoffs. But that's a different story because Jeremiah Smith is Jeremiah Smith. However, nonetheless,
Next year's class?
I mean,
Where do you think he's going to go next year? How high?
Jeremiah Smith,
He's got to be the number one.
I was about to
receiver.
say, if he's not number one, I will be very surprised. Keep in mind, it also depends on who the number one team selecting is. You never know. But I think for Jeremiah Smith, it's got to be number one unless he decides to stay another year, which obviously probably not going to be the case. But
He doesn't go the Tim Duncan route.
you never
He's
know.
got to graduate college.
You never
That'd be
know.
big for Ohio State, man.
Would be huge. But, I mean, we look at the quarterback class for next year as well. That's a pretty loaded quarterback class for next year, which is probably why some of these teams are waiting on QB, such as like the Steelers. They obviously selected an offensive lineman, but I mean the QB class for next year is great. Dante Moore, who would have been a first rounder in this class, arguably probably the number 2 pick if David Bailey didn't go to the Jets. I mean Dante Moore, Arch Manning, Julian Sayin, and the list just goes on if you want to name some of them, Gabe.
For sure. I think there's a lot of intriguing guys. And I would honestly put Arch Manning at number 1. Julian Sayin, if he gets better with maneuvering around in the pocket, which was his weakness last year, he could be another guy that could be the number 1 overall pick, especially since so many of these teams need quarterbacks, right? Sam Levitt, who went from Arizona State over to LSU, Lane Kiffin, really good offensive mind. He was able to do a lot of Trinidad Chambliss, who is coming back to Mississippi this season. He's interesting. CJ Carr is a guy who could win the Heisman too with Notre Dame. And how about this? This is my underrated guy, Lenoris Sellers. He has all the physical tools in the world. He can run. He has a cannon for an arm. Just needs to be a little bit more consistent there at South Carolina. But that is going to be such a crazy class, and one that I don't think we've seen for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, for some of those guys, this year is going to be a huge development year. You talk about a guy like Brendan Sorsby, who goes to Texas Tech from Cincinnati, one of the top portal players this year. What about Darian Mensah, who goes from Duke to Miami? He took Duke to an ACC championship. Miami didn't even make it, but they made it to the finals, the national championship game. I mean, the top 10 quarterbacks in this next draft are going to be good. I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Lenore Sellers even went top 10, other than Dante Moore, Julian Sayin, Arch Manning. I mean, what he's done for the Cox has been really, really special.
They're doing good stuff in Columbia, man, and I think Shane Beamer has done some great things and also some maybe not great things. I think at quarterback and defensive line, South Carolina has been really solid over the past few seasons. But again, it's about decision making. It's about consistency. Lenore Sellers should have a pretty good offensive line in front of him. But again, just on traits alone, you've seen guys like Josh Allen get drafted really high, even if they don't have that production in college. Sellers, a guy who's kind of like that in a sense. I don't know if I'm going to call him a future Hall of Famer like Josh Allen is, but he certainly has the traits to as we hear the next pick.
All right, here we go. Let's get the more of your comments here. Joe the Jet writes in, the woe is me mentality of this fan base has to stop. We got to start winning so we can stop being so damn miserable. You cannot blame any.
So another defensive end has flown off the board, but it was not the two that I previously touched on. That being, well, we talked about Kendrick Falk earlier, but guys like Cassius Howell, Zion Young, and I mean, that was Malachi Lawrence from UCF. Pretty much of a, I'd call it a wild card pick here.
Yeah, I was not expecting Malachi Lawrence to be in the first round here in this draft. I think he's a guy that you can mix in on the defensive line with rushing the passer. And again, that's something that Dallas is kind of trying to piece together ever since that Micah Parsons trade. I think they've done a good job of rebuilding that with the assets that they've had, but I don't know, man. Malachi Lawrence, I didn't have a first round grade on him. Clearly Dallas did. He's a guy that might be able to get you some good pass rush snaps again, but he kind of feels like another guy to me, like David Bailey, where he might not be able to stop the run, and that might kill you because Dallas was a team that was terrible against the run last year.
Yeah, and once again, shout out to our viewers. for tuning in. This brings up the Cleveland Browns, who we talked about, need some potential help, especially in that wide receiver room. Do you think Denzel Boston's the pick here? Do you think Omar Cooper Jr. is the pick? We know that those Washington wide receivers, literally and figuratively, they are dogs.
They are dogs. They absolutely are.
They are dogs. And other than Boston, the team picking after the Browns, the Bears, have a top 10 wide receiver from Washington themselves in Rome Odunze. So, with that being said, going back to the Browns, who are now on the clock, who do you pick at number 24?
Denzel Boston, locked and loaded. That's the pick I'm sending in if I'm Cleveland. He fits what Todd Monken wants so well from his wide receivers. And he could end up being a wide receiver one. He might be forced into that role his rookie season to complement Harold Fannin inside playing tight end. And there's still so many pieces Cleveland needs. Their defense is great. But again, they're not going to get a franchise quarterback probably in this draft class. So we're going to have to see if they're going to take a weapon to potentially build on. Maybe Shedeur Sanders ends up being that guy who can be the franchise dude for the Browns. Or again, they might just have a bad year and then pick him at top 10 and get one of those amazing quarterbacks we talked about not too long ago.
And I mean, we talked about the Browns a lot. They just submitted their pick, so we will find out pretty shortly who they're taking. But this brings up the Chicago Bears, one of the biggest surprises last year in the NFL. They were, for those of you who have heart problems, that was probably not the best season for if you're a Bears fan, because those games were just incredibly back and forth, very entertaining. If you're the Bears, who are you going with here? Because, I mean, you talk about their safeties. They lost both starting safeties in Jaquan Brisker and Kevin Byard. Yes, you did pick up a safety, but is safety the choice here with the two safeties on the board who are arguably the best available?
Well, you know what, Avi? I'm really thinking, I think safety, there's still a lot of talent there, and obviously the league doesn't value safeties as much of an impact as they make, I would say. But at the same time, I know he's not going to be a first-round pick probably, but there's one interior offensive lineman that I absolutely love in this class. That's Jake Slaughter from Florida. He's projected to be a day two kind of guy. I think the Bears could probably trade back out of this pick and take him maybe early on day two or see what happens. But he's the top center on the board. Chicago absolutely needs a center, especially if a zone run blocking scheme there in Chicago. He would be a perfect, seamless fit for the Chicago Bears. I would say trade down and take Slaughter.
Or even a guy like Kaden McDonald, who has been linked to the Bears. They do need some help on the interior line. I mean, right before the season last year, they did pick up some veteran defensive tackle help, but they really need a nose tackle, a guy who can get in to the trenches and stop the run. Kaden McDonald's that guy from Ohio State. If he ends up flying off the board, that will be the fifth Buckeye taken in this first round. Unfortunately, we didn't have four go in the top 10. We saw four go in the top 11, with Downs being taken at number 11. But very shortly, we will hear who the Browns' next pick will be, as the Bears are still on the clock.
Now we're getting into the teams that had a chance at the Super Bowl this season. You have the Bears, Bills, 49ers, Texans. All these teams kind of in different spots, but all of them with the same goal and got close to that goal with trying to fight for that Super Bowl spot. So I'm really excited to see how these final picks in the first round are going to turn out, because some of these teams were just a piece or maybe a drive away from making it to the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, and I mean, you also have some of these teams like the Chiefs and the Dolphins will slot back in and will take again after making some trades. So, I mean, nonetheless, the teams that have been competing for the Super Bowl, it'll be interesting to see where they go. A team like Buffalo, what's the next step for the Bills? I mean, they're picking right after the Bears. Everyone, I wouldn't say everyone, a lot of people were expecting Josh Allen to take another step after he won the MVP, but we will get to that in just a second as the Browns make their next selection at number 24 in the draft.
Inside the media room, adjacent to where Roger Goodell is announcing the Bears pick right now. KC Concepcion off the board.
KC Concepcion.
I was going to say they address the wide receiver needs.
Interesting pick.
We talk about how good this wide receiver class is. I mean, you had a guy like Omar Cooper Jr. and Denzel Boston on the board, and they go with Concepcion, who is a speedster from A&M.
I was going to say, he's speedy. You can use him in a bunch of different ways, not only in the passing game, but if you want him in the backfield, you have guys like Dylan Sampson who can also catch the ball and run routes as receivers, even though he's a running back. So there's a lot of just, I would say, creativity left to be seen here for the Cleveland Browns. So I think that's a flashy pick. I think he's a guy who can really help stretch the field. And although you don't have the guys that are going to be those reliable, like 10 target guys, Concepcion can definitely make big plays. That's something Cleveland really lacked last season.
This now brings up the Chicago Bears. What do you think the Bears are going to do here? Monster season from some of those rookies. Arguably, that rookie class was the best in the NFL last year, considering how they played. You got a guy like Hal Monangai drafted late in the draft last year who had an explosive season. Colston Loveland, their first selection at number 10. A lot of people thought they'd take Tyler Warren, but Loveland was the selection, and he proved to be the right selection, although Tyler Warren had a phenomenal first few weeks of football in the NFL. Who do the Bears go with here at 25? A guy like Caden McDonald to plug up that defensive line, or maybe somewhere off the board, some like safety, even Dylan Thieneman, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Where are you going for the Bears?
Brought it up a little bit earlier. I think we're on the same wavelength in terms of if the Bears bear down on this pick and stay where they're at. I think you probably have to go Caden McDonald here and get a guy who can stop a run. We talked about it earlier with the pick with the Minnesota Vikings and Caleb Banks. It's a division where they really want to run the ball. All four teams have that kind of thinking, and you kind of have to have that tenacity in the NFC North. So I think Caden McDonald is going to be your pick if you stay where you're at with Chicago, and I believe the pick is in, so that's probably what we're going to do. But they should definitely target a guy like Slaughter in the second or third round for tomorrow.
I definitely agree. I mean, the Bears' new offensive coordinator this year, that will be Press Taylor, as Ben Johnson, going to be a second-year head coach for the Bears this season. Had a very good first year. Took them to the divisional round against the Rams, where they lost in a heartbreak. That touchdown by none other than Cole Kmet, the other tight end for the Bears, sent that game to overtime. They had a chance to win it, but ultimately the Rams got the best of them, which led them to the next round, who lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions in the Seahawks. Nonetheless, for the Bears, it'll be interesting to see what they go with. Once again, this brings up the Bills. We talked about them a little bit. Who are you going with if you're the Bills? I mean, is the problem surrounding Josh Allen with the right people? Is it Josh Allen not performing how he should have performed? What do you think?
Josh Allen has had a lot of struggles in the playoffs, and sometimes in these games, it's not his fault because the offense is still rolling, but then he falls victim to the overtime rule against the Chiefs or something like that. So it's a tough spot to be in if you're the Bills. I think as long as Josh Allen is there and he's still running the ball, along with, we already know what his arm talent is like, but if he's running the ball at a high level too, there might not be a better quarterback in the NFL than Josh Allen. So I don't think the offense is going to be the issue. I will say, I think you just need to get best player available on the defensive side of the ball. And as of right now, I would say that's probably McNeil Warren or CJ Allen. The Bills have had some issues trying to replace guys like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer in the past. So I think you might want to go safety there. Also off the edge, Keldrick Falk. He's a guy that I really like out of Auburn. On that edge, he's a really raw guy that could help the Bills get to that next level potentially, but they might just be cursed.
I mean, for the Bills, they really knew who they were going to take, as they took no time in making their selection. The Texans are actually now on the clock, as we haven't even heard the Bears selection, but the Bills already made their choice, so they know who they're going to take in making that next step.
And Avi, the Texans moved up to the Bills spot. We just got word of that.
Did they?
Yeah,
Okay.
So a little bit of a trade up. They jump ahead of San Francisco, and then Buffalo trades back 2 spots. So Houston must really like one of the guys that's on the board right now.
Maybe, and we can go into predicting that for a second, but once again, that just shows how crazy this draft is. I mean, 3 trades. Thank God you were on top of that, because I wouldn't have caught that. But, I mean, who's a guy that maybe the 49ers could have taken that Houston really wanted and traded up for at number 26?
I'm trying to do I wouldn't say the math, but the comparison in my head right now about who that might have been. And really, I don't know, Avi, because both teams need the interior offensive line protection, but the way that they play, I feel like it's two different styles when it comes to the offense. So I don't know if it was going to be an offensive lineman. San Francisco can definitely go a few different ways here. Houston, I would say, they lack the explosiveness on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is one of the best in the NFL, and you would expect that with the pieces that they have. Will Anderson just getting that extension. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be a bully up front who they want to snipe San Francisco for.
I was going to say, I have a different choice, which I don't know if you'll think is interesting, but considering that it's the Texans and they needed some help, obviously, CJ Stroud didn't perform up to his expectations in the playoffs. However, one of those spots was wide receiver. They have Nico Collins. That's the number one guy. But at the same time, what if a guy like San Francisco or Buffalo, both of them, who wide receiver has really been the question. I mean, for the Bills, their wide receiver one last year was Khalil Shakur. And for the Niners, their number one receiver, I mean, it's got to be Mike Evans now, you'd think. So who is that receiver is what I'm thinking that potentially the Texans really want to land. Is it the dog the actual dog itself, or will that be Omar Cooper Jr.? We will find out, Denzel Boston or Omar Cooper Jr., if it's a wide receiver, but nonetheless, here come the Bears on the clock.
NFL draft. Chicago Bears select Dylan Thieneman.
So Dylan Thieneman, the safety from the University of Oregon, he's headed to Chicagoland. Avi, take it away.
I really like the pick. If you are the Bears, I mean, once again, they lost both of their safeties last year in Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker. But at the same time, you have a guy like Dylan Thieneman who was projected towards the end of the first round that lands in your hands. The question now becomes, if you're the Bears, you've addressed some of those issues the last couple of years, and you've started to look like a much better team altogether. Do you now trade back and take a guy like Caden McDonald, who really needs the help, who the Bears really need the help at D tackle? We will see. But for now, once again, the Texans are now on the clock. And going back to that, Denzel Boston or Omar Cooper Jr., who do you think, if it's going to be a wide receiver?
I still think Boston, but at the same time, I'm starting to realize Keldrick Falk is still a guy who's on the board. I'm so surprised that he's been here for this long. San Francisco needs a pass rush help. They were one of the worst units in all of football last season in that category. I wouldn't say the Texans necessarily need it, but like we saw earlier with the Giants, double dipping with Arvell Reese there from Ohio State on the edge. Maybe the Texans want to try to get ahead of San Francisco because they desperately need an edge rusher. So I'm going to change my pick, and I think it might actually be some pass rush help because San Francisco has one glaring weakness, and that's absolutely on the pass rushing end.
Yeah, and that starts to make me question, Gabe, where's a guy like Jermod McCoy going to end up? Arguably one of the best corners in this draft and one of the best corners in college football last year. Once again, some injury concerns. However, I mean, his average draft position for some of these experts was around the mid-teens, teens area, maybe at 20. But we're now at pick 26, and he still hasn't been taken. What do you think?
I think there's been a lot of trades. That's where my mind is going because now we see Miami moving up to pick number 27, and now there's just a bunch of chaos. So now, obviously, the Dolphins have a guy that they like. San Francisco, there's two different schools of thought here. Either San Francisco heard who the Texans took right in front of them, and they're like, okay, that was our guy. Houston got us. Or they didn't really like the value of where a lot of players were at, and they moved from 27 to 30 where the Dolphins were at. So there's a bunch of different ways to think about this. And then you have a team like Kansas City in that Trent McDuffie trade where the Rams were able to land a superstar corner, where the Chiefs are in the first round once again. There's just so many moving pieces here at the end of the first round. That's where my head is at right now, but there's still a lot of talent on the board, especially on the defensive side.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, lots of movement. We talked about earlier in the draft how the Chiefs moved up to take the number 6 pick instead of 9. I mean, who knows who Miami could be thinking as the Niners? Do you think now, because the Texans traded into that number 26 spot. They are going to take that wide receiver. I mean, I keep saying it's going to be a wide receiver because I truly think it. But if it's a defensive end, I might look silly.
I think edge, man. I think edge is the play.
It is a loaded edge class, and we will see coming up shortly as the Dolphins have just over 4 minutes left on the clock to make their choice. So, I mean, although they traded for that pick, are they really sure who they're going to take? Was it the Niners that initiated that trade? Of course, we don't know as of now, but here come the Texans to make the pick very soon.
Miami's in a weird spot too, I think, because we're at pick 27. I mean, man, that roster just got decimated by age, bad contracts, money, everything I feel like went wrong for the Miami Dolphins in 2025, and they're about to get hit hard with a rebuild, especially since they didn't have a whole lot of money to spend in free agency this year because of a dead cap, with releasing guys like Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, just a lot of different players, and Bradley Chubb too with a massive contract. So the Dolphins are in a really tough spot, and you got to go best player available. Obviously, they saw someone that they really liked. Maybe it's a Jermod McCoy.
Here comes Roger Goodell to make the pick. Just wanted to say earlier, you missed this, Gabe, but they actually chose Hayden Proctor, the offensive tackle. Joey and I thought that was a little bit early for him, but let's see what the Dolphins do nonetheless right now the Texans do right now at 26.
Houston Texans select Keelan Rutledge, guard, Georgia Tech.
So now the second guard flies off the board here in the NFL draft.
Keelan Rutledge. Interesting. Again, a guy who, depending on where you looked, might have not been the top guard available. San Francisco, a team that really needed offensive line help as well. They're in the trenches. So Houston knew that San Francisco needed help inside and decided they were going to jump them for Rutledge. And then on the other hand of this, San Francisco either heard that Rutledge was going to be a Texan and decided to trade back, or they just liked the value in general. But nevertheless, you want to protect your franchise guy in CJ Stroud. Again, I really worry about the explosiveness of this offensive group, and I think that's going to hold them back until they get a difference maker outside.
Yeah, and we now see the Dolphins have made their selection, so it will now be the Bills back on the clock, who we originally thought was going to be taken at number 26. But yeah, that makes 4 trades now here at the NFL draft, 1 into the top 6. So, Gabe, let's just take a step back. We've had
I like that song.
a lot of the experience so far. We are now at pick number 28 with the Bills. Maybe we'll finish. Maybe we'll do up until the Seahawks. But for now, what has been your biggest surprise so far, and what do you think about the draft so far?
Biggest surprise. Oh, I love that question. I haven't even thought about it a whole lot, but to me, it kind of came at the beginning. And I think talent-wise, he could be a top 4 guy, but I think what really changed the trajectory of this entire class, which made things kind of get thrown up into the air, I think it started at Carnell Tate at number 4. I think it started Cleveland thinking, okay, we can trade back because there's so many tackles we like. Get there at number 9, pick up some assets. Mansour Delane went off the board a lot earlier than we thought he was going to at pick number 6. So I think that's kind of what jump-started the whole thing. You can obviously point at Ty Simpson going to the Rams as well there at the 13 spot, because there are some people who thought that he's not going to be a starting quarterback. Sean McVay and the team in LA definitely thought so. So I would say either Simpson, and then an underrated one is Carnell Tate, because it really did start to shake up where teams started prioritizing their positions.
I definitely agree. And we'll say this, Gabe. How about after pick number 28 when the Bills select, that's when we'll end the show, because we got some stand-ups to shoot. I mean, for us, we've been here for almost 7.5 hours now, and it's been a crazy day.
Absolute warriors.
It's been a crazy day.
Hold it down.
Once again, we thank all of you guys for tuning in, both on the Mixler and the YouTube into SGSR. 2.5 hours now into this live stream, and we already saw the Chiefs pick at number 6, so we don't got to see some of those contenders pick the rest of the draft. So make sure to stay tuned for that content on social media coming out very soon once we are done after pick number 28 in the Bills. But you've got to assume that the Bills are taking wide receiver. I just raved about the wide receivers. I think Boston or Cooper has to go here if you're the Bills, because they really need the help at receiver. Okay, fine. They just traded for DJ Moore, but you still need some help at receiver.
Bills are always in a weird spot because I feel like they always need receiver for some reason, but at the same time, your defense is getting older, they're aging out. You're pouring all this money into Josh Allen, and it's just a weird spot for the Bills to be in because obviously you can't rebuild with a guy like Josh Allen, especially getting into his 30s, and especially for the play style that he has where he wants to run the ball up the middle all the time. It's a risky game to play if you're Buffalo, and if something happens to Allen or he starts regressing a little bit, you're really kind of staring down the barrel in terms of your Super Bowl contention. This is a team that hasn't made the Super Bowl since the 90s.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying that the one team that haunted the Bills was the Kansas City Chiefs. They didn't play them last year, but, the Bills still struggled to make it far into the AFC, at least to where they want to be with Josh Allen. Maybe with that extra dad strength now, Allen can really take his game to the next level. But for now, once again, the Dolphins have made the selection, and the Bills will wrap it up for us, at least at pick number 28. So Miami is going to be choosing very shortly. We talked about how they draft, or I talked about at least, Caden Proctor a little bit. Who do you think Miami goes with here at number 27?
Dolphins can go anywhere, man. Again, Caden Proctor, I really liked that pick, actually. Maybe we can have a fist fight about it later off air, but I think Jermon McCoy is a really solid pickup if you're Miami. I know there's some issues in terms of health potentially, but at the same time, the talent just jumps off of the page when you're looking at him. So I would go Jermon McCoy here. What are you going to lose if you're Miami right now? You have Malik Willis, who may or may not be the franchise guy, but there's so many needs on that team. They're not going to be very good next year.
With the 27th pick,
Here comes Roger Goodell to make the selection. Well, not make the selection, but
Miami
announce it.
Dolphins select Chris Johnson, defensive back, San Diego State.
So Chris Johnson, not CJ2K Chris Johnson, but the defensive back from San Diego State. Kind of an interesting pick here for Miami, especially if Jermon McCoy on the board.
I am very surprised by that. If they were going to go defensive back or cornerback, I was really assuming a guy like him or Terrell would fly off the board. But nonetheless, it'll be an interesting choice here as a little bit of a different looking Bills logo selecting next. It's actually the runner-up to the Super Bowl selecting at number 28. Now the Patriots move to number 28. Now they trade with the Bills. The Bills now move back to number 31. So what do you think Vrabel and company is cooking here in
Well, here, let me say this about Chris Johnson and the Miami Dolphins. I think depending on what defensive scheme you want to run, he's going to be good, right? And we have so many needs. The defense is going to look rough next year. It's going to be a rebuilding year likely for the Miami Dolphins. He's a guy who gets bullied a lot when he's playing up close, especially in press. And I think that's a giant issue, especially when you have other guys maybe at a safety position who could have had more of an immediate impact. And I think that can be an issue for the Miami Dolphins. Now, at the moment in the AFC East, there's not a ton of elite wide receivers, I would say. I think Garrett Wilson probably the top guy right now in that division in terms of just talent at the wide receiver position. But when you start going up against some of these elite receivers and you need to be physical up front, Chris Johnson has struggled in the past in the Mountain West level coming out from San Diego State. So I think that could be a little bit of an issue for sure.
I definitely agree, Gabe. He was projected, or I'd say the mid-40s. He was projected for some of the experts in their mock drafts. But nonetheless, interesting choices here so far in the first round. And I don't worry about cutting me off earlier, as I was getting a little ahead of schedule as, we're starting to wrap it up at pick number 28. Seen a lot of trades. The fifth trade now with the Patriots moving up to number 28 and the Bills sliding back. The Bills seem like they're in no rush to make a selection. Maybe one of those wide receivers, as I keep raving about, such as Omar Cooper, Denzel Boston, maybe they'll still be there. As who will the Patriots now select at 28 before wrapping it up here on SGSR?
I'd say go CJ Allen here. Here's the pick. So we saw Spencer Fanu come off the board earlier, and now his teammate on the opposite end gets selected, Caleb Fomu, and the Patriots I think that was their biggest need heading into this offseason. You saw it in the Super Bowl, another guy who can protect Drake May.
Yeah, a guy that certainly will be an immediate impact for the Patriots. I mean, just last year at number 4, they selected Will Campbell to help on the interior. I mean, he played a little bit of left tackle as well. I mean, yeah, the Patriots did make the Super Bowl last year. Yeah, they're going to be good again this year. I mean, so far, it's been pretty solid so far, and I think this pick is just added on. And speaking of that, Gabe, how about we just continue this? We keep it going, and I'll do some stand-up hits for a second. I'll do some stand-ups.
Absolutely.
We can get Joey back on here. I mean, I know Joey's floating around. We see him right now. Let's have Joey hop back on. You took a break earlier. I'll take the break.
Man.
I'll take the break now.
I was sprinting around in the humidity, man. Come on now.
I'll do some solos, but for now, I'll toss it over to you. Good luck. I'm sure I'll be back before you guys wrap it up at pick number 32. So good luck, Gabe. Joey will come in just a second. But once again, Gabe, have some fun with Joey. And when I come back, let me know who some of these teams shoot their shot with as we head towards the end of this first round.
Absolutely. Wise words from the incoming VP of programming here on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio. And we got a lot of great events coming up here for baseball and softball, at least for next month in May as we fade into the summer, and then have football coverage for Ohio State back in September. Definitely want to do more on the reporting side of things there on the socials, like you're going to see with Avi right now. And it's probably going to come up pretty soon. Joey Bardak, welcome back to the show.
Yeah,
how have you been?
I've been good. I've been in there listening to a lot of press conferences, getting some cool footage, hearing what the players are up to.
What's your biggest takeaway from the press conference? Was there a specific quote that stood out for a player?
I think just Caleb Downs. He's just a cool down. Like, I don't know. Sometimes you hear these people, you just get a vibe. They're going to be great. He has the confidence. He has the swagger. He has the humility. It was just really cool hearing him break down the game, hearing him talk about his game. The more I learn about him, the more I hear from him, the more I think there's no way he's not a star.
You were so close to having that pun, and then you just shifted away from it, and I'm heartbroken by that. You said Caleb Downs, and then you were going to say down-to-earth guy, but, man, it works.
It's been a crazy day. I usually have that one.
Well, the Chiefs pick is going to be in here pretty soon, San Francisco on the clock. Joey, when you're looking at what's been happening, at least in the 20s, in terms of what these teams have been doing, is there something that stands out to you?
Let's take a look here.
Malachi Lawrence was surprising at 23. I didn't think he was going to go in the first round for sure, but nevertheless, this is where teams kind of reach a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, is I think it's times like these where we learn how little information people have in the mock draft. Every single mock I saw had Vikings taking Thieneman at 18, or maybe going D-line with someone like Cade McDonald, and then there we have
Caleb Banks, who wasn't projected a first-round guy.
Exactly, he was projected mid to early second, and we see him there. Lawrence, a lot of mocks not being projected in the first. We usually see someone like Cassius Howell. I don't think we've heard Kendrick Falk's name yet.
Oh, man, Avi, that's probably part of a reason why he got up and left. I was just hammering Kendrick Falk the whole time because I think he's so underrated. Just the frame, the size, the speed he possesses along with the power. I think he's a little bit of a raw guy, but I think talent-wise, he could have been like a top 10 guy in this class. He just didn't put all of it together at Auburn.
Yeah, I think I had him towards the 15 range. I knew the Buccaneers were going to go edge. I think what happened with this draft is just a lot of people slid. Bain slid to 15. How do you turn that down? And then Mesidor with his great play in the playoff, he kind of jumped. So then, yeah, there's a little bit of a slide.
As we're awaiting Roger Goodell to come in and announce the pick that the Kansas City Chiefs are about to have, the New York Jets traded with the San Francisco 49ers to pick 30 as well. And there's a lot of these late-round trades. How much of the fifth-year option do you think factors into these teams trading up and getting those guys to have them for potentially an extra year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's huge. I think we're seeing in the NFL, I mean, teams giving up on good players constantly just because expiring contracts, just because they don't want to pay. I mean, we're constantly seeing teams draft players. I kind of think of like ETN. You know, teams draft players, they play well, and then, oh, we could just re-sign this player, or we could just get a new one. And we see that with every position and so on and so forth. It's cycles. You're going to see with the Cowboys pick probably. They're not going to want to pay him. They're probably going to trade him for a pick and draft a receiver next year or something. So, I mean, yeah, being able to keep a guy next year is massive.
So 49ers drop back 3 spots. They give up pick 30. The Jets trade pick 33. So the first pick in the second round. And then pick 179 to move up that spot. So not a huge trade there, but when you're a contending team, like a lot of those late picks, especially if you're good at drafting in those later rounds, can be very valuable. As we see Roger Goodell walk onto the screen here, at least above us, in this very humid Pittsburgh weather.
They just traded up.
Pick 29, Kansas City Chiefs.
2026 NFL Draft. Kansas City Chiefs select Peter Woods.
Peter Woods, the interior defensive lineman from Clemson. This is essentially what they traded Trent McDuffie for to the LA Rams. Joey, how do you feel about that pick?
I like it, I guess. If you're going to go DT, I'd go McDonald, who I'm pretty sure is still on the board. The press conference, they don't do a great job of keeping up with the drafts. They focus on the current athlete at hand, so I've been a little behind. But I think if you're going to go DT, I'd go McDonald.
McDonald's still there.
Over Peter Woods. I think Peter Woods, along with Clemson, Klubnik and just Clemson in general, came into the year with a lot of high expectations. I saw Woods mock. I mean, I don't want to say number 1, number 2, maybe at the very start of the year.
He's top 5 in a lot.
Yeah, he's really slid throughout the year. He's struggled this year. So, and McDonald's is fantastic for higher standards. I would think McDonald. Also, given the Chiefs' needs, I really think they should have gone edge. I think they desperately need pass rush. I think if you get someone that provides a little more versatility, Woods is going to play that.
They traded 33.
More. You get Hawk, you give yourself a lot of versatility. You give yourself pass rush score. You could put him on the outside. You could put him on the line. You could use him inside. Falk was there. Howell was there, who provides a lot of athleticism. I don't mind them going D-line. I don't love the personnel change.
Yeah, but either way, I think the Chiefs definitely needed, I don't know what the word is, a makeover on defense. I think a lot of their guys are either getting older or it's time to pay some of them. So they kind of had to revamp where they were at with that. They did mouth Mansour Delane at pick number 6, where they gave up a 3rd, and then a day 3 pick as well to move up a few spots to select the corner out of LSU. And now Peter Woods, I wouldn't say, because Chris Jones could definitely be a Hall of Famer, and I don't want to try to make comparisons to guys that could be going to the Hall of Fame, but Peter Woods, kind of like a mini Chris Jones. I mean, he's really twitchy inside, especially for his size. He's a good pass rushing guy, but I think at times he can get a little bit bullied by bigger offensive linemen. So maybe he has some time to kind of sit and learn from a guy like Chris Jones, but at the same time, there were a lot of other needs on this Chiefs defense.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's maybe a better fit for Woods than it is for the Chiefs. Woods gets to sit behind Chris Jones, one of the all-time greats, and learns, which is a great opportunity for him. The Chiefs, DT, I mean, they run a 4-3, and I think the other defensive tackle is Mike Gannon. He's really getting up there. So I think that he could plug right into that second DT role and learn a lot from Jones. It's a good move for Woods. I think it works out great for him, but I would like to see them get someone on the edge that could have played alongside Karlaftis. I kind of wanted them to take Bain early in the first. They moved up for Delane because the Commanders could take him at 7. Bain slipped. Maybe they said we don't know about him. They do. But either way, they didn't go edge there, and I wish they would have.
All right.
And I'm a little disappointed they didn't have.
Here's the selection.
2026 NFL Draft. The New York Jets select Omar Cooper.
Omar Cooper headed to the Big Apple for the New York Jets. He was hanging around at the top of the draft board for quite a while, but Garrett Wilson has a new partner opposite of him.
Well, I'll tell you what, I really like this move. They got him at, what was that, 30?
We wanted to.
I saw Cooper, Jets fans want him at 16. So now you get Bailey, you get Sadiq, and now you get Cooper at 30. I think the Jets are piecing together a really, really nice draft, which is a percentage you really don't hear often.
Well, yeah, and I think there's so many needs on this New York Jets team. Geno Smith is going to be your quarterback next year. He had 17 interceptions in total. He was the tank commander for the Las Vegas Raiders, who had been number 1 overall pick. So it's going to probably be another rough year for the New York Jets, but at the same time, bearing all of this talent together and potentially getting a top-tier quarterback next year in a very deep QB class, I think we're kind of building up for right way, don't you?
I absolutely do. I mean, Geno Smith is probably just the placeholder quarterback until they can go draft someone next year, which I think is smart, by the way. I think outside of Mendoza, this was an incredibly weak quarterback class, and I think that for them, they could have bid on Simpson, they could have bid on Carson Beck, but for them to be like, we know we need a quarterback, and we recognize the quarterbacks are bad, so we're going to wait. It's smart. Use their picks to get a tight end and a receiver they can use for the future. They also have Wilson and Brees Hall, who crossed off the skill position next week. They give themselves a chance to play offense this year, which they didn't get to last year. Even with Geno, maybe Geno plays well because he's got weapons, and then you get a quarterback for the future, or you still have weapons, and then you can go and get a good quarterback. So I think they're absolutely building something. I'm really excited to see it.
So the Tennessee Titans are trading up to pick number 31, which was just owned by the Buffalo Bills. Who do you think they're going to end up taking here? Because at the moment, they shocked everyone a little bit with Carnell Tate at number 4, but there are a lot of needs, especially on that offensive line, that they need to address.
Yeah. My initial thought with them is that they were going to go Love early. But Love didn't go. I don't think they really need another running back. I think Tyler Spears is fine.
It's a solid duo.
Yeah, you take Love if he's there, because people, if you think he's a talent, and you think he is, otherwise you could wait for a running back. And then I wanted them, if not to go Love, to go Bailey or Reese. Reese fell in, take and they went receiver. That's fine. Air Ward is a really great receiver. You need to do that. Now you go and you get your versatility, you get your edge. I think this is time for Paul. This is time for Howell. I'm not sure TJ Parker's still on the board from Clemson. Another edge guy.
TJ Parker's still on the board right now.
I think this is maybe when you go and get one of those guys, get your pass rush, get someone that can bring new life on your defense. I think that's the play.
Let's just go back to the Jets for a minute because Omar Cooper was their 3rd selection. That's going to be a crowded plane and press conference once they all travel to New York for that. But impressive draft for them right now. David Bailey, and again, I have some reservations against what he'll do at the next level, at least in terms of stopping the run, especially if a guy like Arvell Reese on the board. Kenyon Sadiq at 16, top tight end in the class out of Oregon, and then Omar Cooper Jr., another weapon from Indiana. What grade would you give the Jets initially in the first round?
Honestly, I'd give him an A. I mean, I'm not sure the Bailey reservations. I'm all in on him. I think he's phenomenal. I think I was higher on him than I was on Reese because I think that Bailey is more of just your true edge. I think Reese had some limitations with his form and whatnot. He had the athleticism, but I don't think he had the technique Bailey does. Bailey, he just has the ability to get the quarterback in any given situation. I think he's been translated so well. Sadiq,
he's a pure pass rusher for sure.
He sure is. Which, as long as you can get some other weapons on that line, you can justify having a guy like that. Sadiq, I mean, they gave up on Mason Taylor right away, which is a little disappointing, but I think Sadiq is a phenomenal talent. And if you're trying to build up your offense from ground,
See Titans.
You set a record for the first night of the draft.
I'm trying to go live again.
320,000 people were at this draft in Pittsburgh, which is an NFL draft record. And Joey, I don't know if you took a walk outside at all, but it seemed like at least myself and Avi, along with the people at the Lantern, there were a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, I'd sure seen that. I mean, every step I went was mobbed by fans. Very crowded. I mean, they have flooded the city. And Pittsburgh's really not that huge of a city, like land-wise. And yeah, it's really evident when you have a city like Pittsburgh with it's very condensed, and then you have all these people. It's very, you can really tell.
Well, Keldrick Falk, I've been just banging the table saying somebody take Keldrick Falk. He lands to Tennessee at pick 31. They needed some edge rushing help. They opted not to go that route earlier on in the first round, and they really liked that value. Again, a guy who has a ton of size, who's super quick. I think he's a guy that Robert Saleh is going to have a lot of fun developing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great move. You pass up on edge early on. You pass up on edge early on. You go for receiver, which is great. because right now your number one receiver is pretty much either Kyle Manor. Either a young quarterback in Cam Ward, you pair him with a great receiver. And, you give up those two edges, which is a little tough, but then you make up for it. I think Falk could have been in the teens or at the very least early 20s. So I think to get him this late is tremendous value. We know what Solid can do with his defense. We know what he's done with great pass rushers like this. I think it's a great move. I'm really excited for what Falk can do with a solid defense.
Well, Joey, I really appreciate your time hopping on, filling in for myself and Avi during this time at the NFL draft. I want to say thank you for hopping on. And then next year, VP of podcasting here for Starling Gray Sports Radio. What can we expect with that?
I think we could expect a lot of podcasts for sure. Going to definitely try and do a lot of NFL, NBA, and then probably a lot of Ohio State as well. College football, college basketball, Big Ten entirely. Just a lot of stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. So definitely.
We're all really excited for you, Joey, but thanks again for hopping on and all the great NFL draft coverage that you were able to bring to us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gabe.
Thank you. That means Avi's coming back. One final
Good to be back, Gabe.
pick.
It's great to be back.
One final pick here in the first round, the Super Bowl winning Seattle Seahawks. They really need a running back, and I don't know if there's that many more clear needs in this draft class than Seattle trying to get a guy who can tote the rock after Kenneth Walker went to Kansas City.
Yeah, and I mean, it'll certainly be interesting to see who Seattle goes with. They looked very dominant last year, especially in the Super Bowl. I mean, defense certainly wasn't the issue for the Seahawks. They got to Drake May in the Super Bowl stealing baby or candy from a baby. It was pretty insane how much their defense performed. But as we start to wrap up the first round, Gabe, I'll leave it with you. The Seattle kid, not necessarily a Seahawks fan, but from
Kid,
Seattle.
I'm like 20 years older than you, basically.
Who do you
Dog
think
years.
that the Seahawks are going to take with the final selection in the first round?
Man, it's a reach. I know it's crazy. I think it'd be cool to see Jonah Coleman, a guy that played in Seattle and had a lot of success, go back to the Seahawks. I think it's a little too rich taking him at 32. John Schneider does some weird things in the first round. He's definitely one of those guys that likes to go off the board a little bit, at least at the end of the first. But you know what? I think Jadarian Price is the guy. I don't know. I mean, the thing for me is that you really need a guy to complement Zach Charbonnet. You haven't replaced that yet. But running back at the same time, is that Price too rich for a guy like Price?
I mean, for them, consider this pick essentially like a second round. It's the last of the first round. What value are they going to get in terms of running back being at this pick? And I really like the Jonah Coleman pick. I think last year at Washington, he was pretty good. Keeping someone in state, that could definitely be the choice for the Seahawks. I mean, Jadarian Price as well. When you're playing with a guy whose name happens to be Jeremiah Love, that happens, right? I mean, sometimes Jadarian Price won't get the attention he deserves, but not necessarily because he isn't living up to the Jeremiah Love standards, but because he still needs that development aspect as a running back.
And this is a term I like to use a lot in my football calls, but I would say Jadarian Price is like a bottle rocket. I love the term bottle rocket for a guy like Jadarian Price because he's so explosive as soon as he gets the ball. He has that long speed. He has the elusiveness to make people miss. I would say that's the way to go. Is the price a little too rich? It absolutely is, but you get a playmaker alongside Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's going to be a really nice offense next year, probably for the Seahawks, especially if they get a guy who can complement Charbonnet's ground and pound style.
Yeah, and as we start to wrap up, once again, for those of you tuning in on both Mixler and YouTube, thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a long, almost 3 hours for us now, and we're only at pick number 32. Stay tuned because there will be more social media stand-ups and social media hits as Roger Goodell comes to the stand to make the last pick. But
stand-up analysis, not comedy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sometimes.
Comedy is not our lane.
We like to be funny, but we'll keep that to ourselves. Before Roger announces the selection, Once again,
But you know what? The
stay
going
tuned.
rate for wide
Potentially
receivers
some
in
bonus
the NFL
coverage.
is off the charts.
Second round
Premium
coming up.
position.
I mean,
Alex
who
Pierce
knows?
is a solid
Will we start
wide
diving into that?
receiver, right?
Nice little
Best
teaser.
number 2 you could
We will
find.
see.
$29
Also,
million a
make
year.
sure you are
It's a
following
premium
us on our
position. So they
socials.
took Cooper at 16
The
out of
Instagram
17.
for
They weren't 16,
sgsr.osu
they
has
felt
been
like he was a
completely
mismatch
revamped with this
for
new
defense.
marketing
He
team
was a
that's
guy
coming in.
that was
Some
too good to
very
pass up.
good
They had
and
him
promising
higher
things
than
ahead for us on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio.
Denzel Boston.
Gabe
Higher
Eaker right
than
here will
Cooper
be
Jr.
our president for
But
next
at
year. I will be
30,
serving as the vice
Jet
president for
Cooper
programming
is
and
incredible
programming and
value.
development.
And
We
if you
just
look at
heard
what
from
the
Joey
Jets gave
Bardak,
up,
one of our other
the New
vice
York
presidents.
Jets,
He's vice
they
president of
traded
podcasting. Shout out to
33
Ava Dublikar,
and pick
VP of
179.
marketing, and lastly,
That is a great.
Sam
not good, that is a
Rodriguez. He
great
will be
return by
our
Darren
VP
Nugent
of
to get a deal done
finance. But
with the San Francisco
Dylan's
49ers.
announcing the pick.
Pick
let's hear
179.
Dylan,
Folks, that's
Super
a
Bowl
5th round
champion
pick.
Seahawks,
That's
making
a
the
top
selection.
pick that the Jets received
Dylan doesn't have a
this
last
offseason.
name.
They still have their 2 4th-round picks.
Oh man, that mic is peaking. He's
They
hyped.
still have their 44th pick of round 2. So for the Jets to
Wow,
be
he's
able to
fired
get
up.
a wide receiver to complement.
I don't know if he
the weapon
announced
they
the pick
already
yet or
had
not, but he is
in
just
the
shouting
team
into that
and
mic
not
right
have
now.
to trade a ton to pull
Here we
it
go.
off. I think you got to be pumped up if you're a Jet fan. This is a really good deal by Darren Nugent. The value makes sense. The value.
Darian Price goes to the Seattle Seahawks. Avi, that was a match made in heaven. Was the price a little rich? Probably, but he brings just an extreme level of explosiveness to the Seahawks, who just won the Super Bowl. And I would say they're not going to miss Kenneth Walker as much as we thought they were.
Gabe, I will say, in terms of these Notre Dame running backs, I hit on Jeremiah Love earlier, and you absolutely smacked this pick in Jadarian Price. I agree with you. It's a match made in heaven. He is a very good, I wouldn't say a replacement. I'd say he's a good filler for Kenneth Walker.
Love that.
K9, he steps out, goes to the Chiefs. They still have Charbonnet, all right? This will be a 1-2 punch. I will say, not necessarily similar to how Gibbs and Montgomery function in terms of what they are as running backs, but still, in a sense, both of them can be very good in different types of situations for the defending Super Bowl champions.
Jadarian Price, too, over the past 2 seasons, again, he was backing up Jeremiah Love, who got drafted 3rd overall in this draft class. Price was able to amass over 1,300 yards in those 2 seasons, 20 total touchdowns. And this is with a guy like Jeremiah Love, who is a 3-down back who eats up so many carries. Price is so special. It was just the matter of fact that he was buried behind a generational guy like Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about some of these bust-proof guys. Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Love. These are guys that no matter what team they play for, they are going to be solid. No matter what scheme they fit in, if they don't even fit the scheme, they're going to be solid players. I wouldn't necessarily say that Jadarian Price is bust proof, but I will say, given the scheme he's now in with the Seattle Seahawks, that's a very good pick. And I'll quote your words, a match made in heaven.
I wish you said bottle rocket, man. That would have just been the cherry on top here in Pittsburgh in the 1st round, but that's going to do it for the coverage for us, at least on the YouTube and the Mixler side for tonight. Make sure to stay tuned on the social media. We'll have more for you, especially if these Ohio State guys that got drafted. 4 total guys got drafted from the Scarlet and Gray. Caden McDonald likely to hear his name called here tomorrow. But Avi, anything else you want to say? You have the floor, my man.
The last thing I'll say is I'll use your word, all right? It's been a bottle rocket day for us. Long day, nonetheless, exciting. We are very thankful to the NFL to be able to cover this event. Obviously, we primarily cover college sports, but for us to be now at the NFL level here in Pittsburgh for the draft, it has been an amazing experience. So thank you to everyone on the SGSR side and the NFL for letting us be here and letting us be a part of this experience. But once again, as Gabe said, that will do it here for us on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio. Thank you very much for tuning in. Mixler, YouTube, whatever you are on, you are a part of our stream today, and we thank you for that. Stay tuned for more bonus coverage coming on the SGSR socials for Avi Schoenberg and
Gabe Eaker.
Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you later on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio Network.
But part of the reason why I didn't love him at 16 is it's more of a projection if you're going to say he's going to play on the outside. But he can do it.